Metal up, world. This is CJ. I am the Metal Motivator. Seated next to me, let me see. When you're talking about the ivory halls of higher education, he is the fire-breathing professor of ass-kickery. He's the dean who destroys all things douchebaggery. At the Spartex Slaughterhouse, he is the chief butcher of body brutality. In terms of your politically correct friends, he is toxic masculinity. And within the sacred tribe of heavy metal thunder, he is Patrick Heavy Metal McNamara.
Wow. That was awesome, man. Thank you for that.
And was that new one? Chief butcher of body brutality at the Spartex Slaughterhouse.
Nice.
To me, he's Raven. I'm the only one who calls him that.
That's right, Cubby Leader.
So, Mac, long time.
Yeah, man.
When was the last time we did this? Do you remember?
No, I do not.
December, wasn't it? I know we didn't do it in January, and it's
has it been that long?
So it's been it's probably early December.
Huh.
We always say we're going to go back and do month to month, and then it's like life.
Life happens, bro. All of us.
I was just standing in Mac's office, and we're talking about looking up at his calendar and what he was doing for this year, and showed me what was going on last year. And I'll tell you what, man, for the both of us, I'm amazed we do what we do, get done what we get done. I had expedited my move as I was driving up here. It's a kind of a lengthy drive when I come up here, but talking to my mom.
Oh, right on.
Basic dude stuff,
Yep.
right? Call your mom.
That's right.
So I called my mom, and we were talking, and she just said, well, thank you for doing this, because it seems like I hardly talked to you. I said, Mom, it's, I'm gonna talk to my mom for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Mom, if you call me in the middle of the day or whatever, I know it's not an emergency.
Right.
You're just like, hey, hon, how you doing? I'm not gonna stop for an hour and a half. So I get these times where I just go, and then I'll talk to her. But all to say is that's the kind of busy, crazy life that the both of us are leading.
Yeah, I got seconds in the day.
Yeah. Seconds in the day. Yeah, it's about maximizing that. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit more about that as it relates to the whole concept of time by one Meriwether Lewis.
Ooh, right on.
But let me just start the outset with the house cleaning here. Out front, our show sponsors. Very grateful to have show sponsors, Mac. They came in and offered to us. That is T-Mac's Blaze Ops blend from Invader Coffee.
Invader Coffee!
InvaderCoffee.com. Our friend Wes Whitlock, he was the one who initiated and said, hey, man, I want to sponsor the show. And so honored to have Wes Whitlock and Invader Coffee. Dude, I'm not kidding, man. That's what I drink. Yeah, that's the coffee I drink.
That's good. I mean, it's real quality coffee. They roast it right there in Austin, and Invader's a veteran-owned company, and Wes is a stand-up dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hear people, I've had somebody said the other day, hey, you should check out Death Wish. Hey, you should check out Black Rifle. I'm like, no, I'm not going to check out any of that. I'm perfectly happy with Invader Coffee. Mm-hmm. Because, not just because they're my sponsor, I was drinking the crap out of it. I'm ordering this stuff, by the box.
Mm-hmm. If it ain't broke.
Yeah, exactly. So now that they're a sponsor, it's a little bit easier. But so thank you so much, Invader Coffee. And then our newest sponsor is Taconic Distillery, man. And I just brought Mac 3 spanking new bottles.
Resupply drop, baby. Taking it.
And in fact, they're going to go on this table back here, which I'm sure he'll tell you more about some other time. But Taconic Distillery, and I'm not a bourbon connoisseur, so I can't speak to these sorts of things. But Mac, you are a serious bourbon drinker.
Yeah, my go-tos are a lot of the the usual suspects. But if you like Woodfords and Basil and Blanton and Buffalo Trace, that kind of thing, you will like Taconic better. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I love all those, but that's my favorite bourbon right there when it's sitting out in front of us.
And our friend, the sensei of spirits, Brad Halling, gave a
he gave it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Brad's the most interesting man in the world.
Yep.
So the most interesting man in the world gave a thumbs up for Taconic Distillery, and they're cool, man. I love I follow them on Instagram, and they see their truck with all the decals on it, beautiful countryscape and distillery, and right in the middle, like Brooklyn, delivering bourbon. So pretty cool. I would love to go up there sometime, just like we would love to do with Wes, and actually do the podcast right there.
That'd be neat. Yep.
You know,
I would dig
with
that.
the show sponsor. So once we get some stuff going, which we may talk about here, well, actually, I did announce it to the page. I did an initial survey. Our objective, gentlemen, and the 3 or 4 ladies out there, our objective here is to start a membership-based coaching program, which is going to work through Pat Mac's page. And so we're working out the details of that. We're talking about something that's going to be less than $20 a month.
Yep.
And no contracts. And you'll be able to sign up and you'll be able to get all the stuff that you see, the little short clips of from basic dude stuff to Sentinel. That's just a foretaste of the full length. So he'll go into great detail about some of the stuff that he covers in that, as well as other crap like, God, man, what can you talk about? I'm looking at gardening.
Everything.
I'm looking at chickens.
Yep. We
art,
could talk about drawing. We could talk about fishing,
woodworking,
bird watching, woodworking, cooking.
So that plus, and plus I'll be contributing myself on mindset stuff and whatever. But this is really about the Macosophy. And so any of you guys who really want to be a part, much closer part of getting some direct coaching in that regard from Mac, this is going to be the place for you to do that. We're going to have more coming to announce. So please follow the Instagram at University of Badassery to keep up with the latest news and updates. We'll have a whole lot more to say about that, but you're going to want to sign up right away because this thing is going to blow up. It's going to blow up big. And, I've been hosting one of my own coaching programs now since 2015, the very same thing for a different audience. And I can tell you this, it changes lives. I'm serious. If you're stuck anywhere in your life right now, if you've reached a plateau, if you just need to get your things sorted out, get the right mindset and just be around a positive environment, especially work much closer with Mac, this is going to be the place to be. One of the benefits, Mac, and I told you this offline to the group that I host, I tell people this every time I pitch it on video. I tell them, I said, you're going to get these videos. You're going to get access to the archives of videos. Right now, dude, over 1,000 videos on over 200 topics in that. But I tell them the best part is the other people in the group.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
Because you meet people just like you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
group dynamic is powerful.
Oh, dude, it's amazing.
When you keep it open forum like that, you could, somebody has an anecdote that can add credible meaning to any particular topic at hand. Something that, you, I, them, they wouldn't have thought of.
Right.
Yeah. So that's good stuff.
Yeah. It's the community effect is going to be really, really powerful. So so you guys want to keep up with us about that. We'll have a whole lot more to say about that very, very soon. And of course, thank you, Metal Mike, for your music for the intro and outro of this podcast. I get people asking all the time. I may do something with him. He wants to do something, a little podcast that's directed to guitar players.
Oh, cool.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we might see Metal Mike do more of this kind of stuff. But anyway, we try to get guests on, and guests are good. My goal, and what I find most of the time, Mac, is that people like our banter. They like to hear you and I go back and forth. So the last time we did Q&A for the podcast,
that was fun.
I think that did really, really well. So therefore, it's my goal to keep Mac engaged.
Yep.
Otherwise, a podcast is 5 minutes long. Mac's like, yes. He's out the door. So I thought I'd go back and I want to focus on some of the things that are really, really important to Mac because those are stuff he loves to talk about. And, one of the things that he's mentioned to me personally, and of course he said on this podcast several times, especially when we get that most oft question asked, what are you reading or what books do you recommend? It's always one book, Mac.
Yeah, there's always one that I put in my top 5, regardless of whether it's a leadership book, a performance book, history,
right?
Because it could fall into all those genres. So, but I always have that one in my top 5. That's
going to be the subject of this podcast today, and it's Undaunted Courage by Stephen Ambrose, who's I don't want to say he's a popular because he's a historian, so he's not like a pop writer. But his books are popular. Yeah. So, Undaunted Courage. This is the story of the Lewis and Clark expedition. and we're going to get into this and break this down. So obviously somebody could watch Mac, they can read the book and they can watch a documentary, whatever, but this is going to be filtered through University of Badassery.
Right. Yeah.
So
yep.
we're going to
As
talk about
badass as it was, we're going to make it
we're going to make it even more badass.
badasser.
And so, in fact, Mac, just what I'm thinking of is in the next episode, I think we should talk sports psychology.
Oh, cool.
So,
all right.
So we'll break down what we wanted, the content we want to consume between now and then, and we'll talk more about that. So that's it's between you and I. We won't tell anybody. But Undaunted Courage, Mac, when did you come across this? Well, what first attracted you to? What was it? Being attracted to the story? Did you know about it growing up? I mean, how did you come across this?
Nope. I came across it when I was still active, and I was looking for an area in the continental U.S. where I could take my guys on a high alpine, long distance orienteering walk with emphasis on privation. Right. I had already been on one, and it was in Wyoming, Wind River area. I walked from Pinedale to Du Bois, which for those of you who know that, that's some terrain right there. Right. That ain't no joke. That's a good movement. So the next time I found an area in Montana, and I realized that, the Core Discovery tracked through a bunch of that stuff. So I started researching them and where they went in that area. And then found that book came out right about the same. When was this written? And I know it took Ambrose like 7 years to write it, because I think he packed his family into an RV, and
he actually traveled it.
Yeah.
96.
Right. So I found that area of Montana in like 98. So shortly after that book was written. And then dove into that and went, oh my God, why don't I know more? Why don't Americans know more about Lewis and Clark and the Core Discovery?
Right.
And what led up to it and its purpose. And man, I just became entranced with them. And I tell you, that is a well-written book, because most of it is just based on their journals. Yeah. And Ambrose paraphrases and adds his 2 cents and his research chunks and everything, but he writes it like a story.
Right.
So you're not just reading the journals, you're reading his basically narration of the journals.
Yeah, Ambrose took an approach not all that dissimilar from what Shelby Foote did with the Civil War series that Ken Burns also did his thing on. Now, his was 3 volumes. It took him like 25 years to write this. He was going to just do a short little one. And then it turned into, he said, if you really want to do it right, in 25 years to write that whole thing. But he said, I did not go to original source material. He said, because that stuff had already been unearthed.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he goes, I wrote from the printed page. But he was initially a novelist. So the way he tells the story is really interesting, because he's telling it from so his descriptive is more novel and narrative, so it's much, much more interesting read. And he did what Ambrose did. He went to all the Civil War battlefield spots at the time of year that they transpired, so he could get the feel of whatever.
Look, listen, feel, sights and sounds of the battlefield.
And so that's part of the beauty of the way Ambrose has a lot of that in here. So he's obviously writing from the written word. So he knows his audience. He knows what his audience needs to hear. And we'll talk a little bit more about the journaling and all that sort of stuff, because there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of, and people try to explain. I've heard everybody's explanation as far as, Lewis's death to the reason why his journals were just had huge swaths, like for a year of no entries. They blame it on some of the psychological stuff. We'll get back to that. But I have a different opinion about that. However, going back to what you described, for you started out with, you wanted to take some of your guys.
And track some of that land that they walked.
Track some of that land. Now, there's something like that, just as an anecdotal question, you can just say, hey, I want to take my guys, and they just say, yeah, go for it.
You got to justify it. I mean, there's a cost associated with that stuff. And, there's risk analysis and all that. So you got to justify it. You got to write up a report. You can't just say, hey, I'm going, and okay, hominis dominus, leftist, rightist, you're good to go.
Have they ever quantified the actual price value of an individual?
Oh, yeah. I can't recall what it is, but it's stupid. Yeah. I mean, we're, $6 million men.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you can't just take them up to grizzly bear country and get them unnecessarily killed.
No, yeah. Yep. A lot of that land that they chartered, that they crossed, is still untouched, which is cool. You're seeing it the same way they saw it.
Right.
A lot of it in some of the wilderness areas and in the Bitterroots and all that stuff. It's still untainted.
Now, so when you go back, semi-annually to Montana, are you still getting close to some of the areas that they were, or?
Yeah, I like last year I did. I stayed in Great Falls the night before,
right,
and then went to the Core Discovery or Lewis and Clark Museum there in Great Falls, and you could walk along, the high pitch of the Great Falls, and you look down and you go, "Holy crap, man!"
Oh my gosh!
And the museum, you get really good perspective because they have a life-size model of these guys dragging one of their keelboats up a cliff.
The keelboat?
Yeah, not the keelboat, the period.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's life-size, and it's really well put together. Yeah. I mean, because they're pulling and all these whatever they are, wax figures or whatever, look very lifelike.
Yeah.
But that museum was well worth the price of entry, whatever that was, the $13, $14.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things, which is why I wanted to do this, Mac, where if you don't get into the story and look at this, you will completely. I mean, it's beyond unappreciation. You won't know shit about this. And I think that goes, I was talking to my friend the other day, we're talking about heavy metal and the difference between Europe and here. And I've said this on this podcast before, but one of the differences is that, why you have so many power metal bands over in Europe, singing about freaking barbarians and Vikings and knights and shit. Well, because they have castles on the hillside.
Right.
And a lot of them, they know their history. Americans have a very short history and most people don't know it.
Yeah.
And so our songs are all about our dysfunction or rebellion or whatever, because that's in our DNA. Our history is very short. Again, most people don't know it. And so this is such a huge thing. I mean, you people not even realize, when they think of St. Louis, they think of the big arch, but you know what that arch is there for?
Yeah, right.
And then you miss out, now with the anachronism of social justice, woke people going back and criticizing, some of the American fathers because of the slavery and all this sort of stuff. So Jefferson's name now gets besmirched.
And that's horrible because he was actually the first emancipator. He was the first. He won. That was his goal.
Yeah.
The guys his peers were like, politically that's not the most popular thing.
Right.
It was kind of one of those, but yeah, he wanted to abolish slavery. He was the first one.
Yeah.
He was adamant about it, and yeah, he had an affair with. Yeah. Yeah, he had a lover, a slave. One of his slaves was a lover, but he loved her. Yeah, it was a true romance.
Yeah, and I think what often happens, you can even look at this from a band perspective. That's why I don't accept people's criticism of a band like Metallica. They'll say, well, yeah, but what about this album? And what about the snare on Saint Anger? It's like, okay, let's weigh the snare on Saint Anger against everything else they've achieved.
Right.
You're telling me it's so equal that you just threw out all your albums? Yeah. You're an idiot.
Yep.
You're just an idiot, man. You're an idiot. You're emotional reactionary. Same thing here. So they're going to discount the vision that Jefferson had. I mean, if you want it, where does Lewis and Clark begin? It begins in Jefferson's mind.
Yeah, man, it really does.
You know what I mean? So he spent what, $15 million to
1803, $15 million to buy this chunk of land called Louisiana, which is basically everything west of the Mississippi.
Yeah, and not knowing exactly what was out there.
$8 per square mile.
Yeah, it was 5 cents a something, 5 cents a something.
Acre. Yeah, whatever it was. I don't know what. Yeah,
but from Napoleon,
right?
He got it from Napoleon.
Yeah,
dude.
15 million, bro.
I want to see those texts.
Yeah, right. No kidding.
Between Napoleon and Jefferson.
Yeah,
Jefferson's all well written.
Yeah, but like you said, not having no idea what was out there. There were horror stories. There were still woolly mammoths.
They believe there was woolly mammoths out there.
They had no idea. Our dinosaurs are really extinct. What are we going to find out there? I know we're going to find saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths. They were sure of it.
Right. Yeah. So that's where it started. I mean, he wanted to see what this country was about. He had a vision. Again, he still had Columbus in his mind. You know what I mean? So he still was concerned about that waterway from east to west,
Right.
and then into Asia, so that there would be, it was all about trade. Everything
Yep.
was about trade. So the Spanish that were still there, the French Canadians, it was still all about the fur trade. Every Indians that they encountered, the only white people they ever dealt with,
Yeah.
for the most part, everything was controlled by the fur trade. And it's funny because, our economy obviously is based on something a whole lot different. And so, we don't realize until you get into a story like this, the bartering that went on, survival was based on things like fur.
Yep.
And to be able to trade that for metals, for rifles, for tobacco,
Yep.
whiskey.
Yeah. Not only survival, but whether you live or you die. Not just am I going to be hungry
Yeah.
or cold, but do I live or do I die? How can you trade? Can you barter? Can you establish rapport? Those kind of things.
Yeah. So Jefferson, it all goes back to this guy's vision about the American empire. And this is different because, he's what they call it, the Republican or Democratic Republicans,
Yeah.
as opposed to the Federalists. And so he was pulling this move like under wraps,
under the radar.
way under the radar. He
Yep.
did not want them to know
Right.
what he was doing.
He was doing it all on the down low.
so the
So
fact
that's so freaking cool. It's not even funny.
the fact that he could get this thing sold
Yep.
and did this, and then immediately thinking about, who can I get?
Right. Now that I bought this backyard, which spans, millions of square miles, how do I find out what's out there?
Dude.
Because there's very little written. It's mostly uncharted, but the only people who were out there, white people,
Right.
were a handful of fur trappers.
Right.
There wasn't a lot going on.
Right.
I mean, it was uncharted and absolutely zero build up. There were no dirt roads or anything. There was nothing even mapped. There were no maps of it.
No, there was so much guesswork going on.
Yep. I mean, asking them back then to find a Northwest Passage would be like a couple of dudes asking us right now to build a craft in my kitchen that we could take to the moon. I mean,
I think that remark was even made by somebody. I think it might have been Clark.
Yeah.
Somebody had made the notation that it would be equivalent to going to the moon and back,
Right.
whatever.
Yep.
Boy, that was talk about a foresight.
Yeah, really.
To
Yeah.
be able to think that
Yep.
that eventually was going to happen.
Yep.
But again, going back to this vision, what's what amazes me, Mac, about the founding fathers, because let's face it, they built the greatest country that's ever existed
Right.
in the history of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a joke. That's not American bias.
Right.
It is the greatest country.
Yep.
So no, it's Sweden. No, everything else is a pale reflection.
I mean, it's semantics. We're not saying best country. We're saying greatest country.
Yeah.
It's semantics.
Yeah, it is the single greatest country, but it all does go back to what was, fueling this particular age of history. Now, it was interesting for me to go through a lot of the story because of my personal knowledge of the history of philosophy and Western civilization, and even from the religious standpoint, because I knew, obviously, that these are still guys very soaked in the Enlightenment. So the idea was with the Enlightenment, we know now there's a connection between what we know in our heads and what happens in reality, and that's why we can predict where a cannonball is going to fall and when winter's going to start. You know what I mean? So it's set over against the Dark Ages, right? That's what makes it an Enlightenment. Dark Ages meaning one completely governed by religious presuppositions and not, man's reason, so to speak. Now, of course, we're living now in the postmodern age where everything is, it's somebody on a cell phone who's like a total esoteric pagan.
Yeah. Right.
So it's juxtaposed. People are believing in ancient esoteric occult rites, all the while texting their friends on it. So it's a weird dynamic. But these guys, no, they were as pure children of the Enlightenment as you can get. They believed that, through reason, through will, through force, man, you could conquer
Yep.
anything. And they had just beat the British.
Yeah.
I mean, the empire. So now he's thinking, okay, well, we're going to go check out what I just bought.
Yeah.
So he's got to find somebody.
Well, fortunately, he had a buddy living with him who was his secretary.
Yeah.
This guy named Meriwether Lewis, who was a an Army vet, a war vet, and very accomplished woodsman. He knew a lot about medicine too from his mom.
Yeah.
Because his dad was killed during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
And his dad was well-to-do. He didn't get recruited or drafted.
Right.
He volunteered. He bought his own gun and stuff and said, well, duty's calling. I'm going to get me some.
And he did.
And so, Lewis was brought up by his mom, who is very well accomplished in like primal medicine and stuff like that. And it's still legit.
Very
when you look at herbal, and it's still legit. If you look at, some of the remedies they were taking for whatever it is, a rash to a stomach ache, it's very similar to what we're doing now. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a bunch of voodoo stuff. They weren't bleeding people and crap like that to get rid of the flu.
Sacagawea they did.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
They couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with her. But that's a good, interesting footnote, because I was amazed at the miracle-like healings.
Yeah.
From the dysentery to these guys. Right. You thought these guys are dead, and then Lewis, I gave him some of this. He was all right in a couple of days.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
How, dude?
I gave him the elixir of chalk with 3 parts resin and 1 part mule piss, whatever it was. Yeah.
That's literally what it was like, man. And these guys are they're feeling good after a couple of days. And but so he's secretary, and so to get him ready, Jefferson sends him to the Philosophical Society up in Philadelphia with a bunch of freaking eggheads.
Yeah, he studies for like a year straight.
Yeah,
just nothing
all
but
kinds of
grind,
crap,
man.
Yeah, that's the other thing about Lewis, dude, was just this. I don't know how you describe his work ethic and intensity.
Because wasn't it while he was studying, he was also building a supply list as well.
Yeah, he was
trying to map out what all that. Can you imagine the logistics behind that? I mean, how many sewing needles they need, how many pounds of salt, and how many ball bearings, the amount of gunpowder. He mapped all that stuff out while he was doing all these studies. It's ridiculous,
dude. It's almost superhuman, because I was amazed at how long that lasted. I kept thinking they got to be out of stuff to trade,
right? And
every time they go, we finally gave him another rifle. Oh, well, were you guys pulling rifles out of your ass or something? Because you're in the freaking, these mountains, and where do you find?
They had a lot of glass beads, man.
A lot of glass, a lot of those metals too, and
yeah.
But yeah, he did. He made that list, and he studied botany and geography and navigation, because they had to just the note taking and that they had to do every step of the way, the measurements, getting off the boat and going, okay, oh look, I just saw this prairie dog. He doesn't know what's a prairie dog.
Right. No idea.
So he catches it.
Yeah.
And somehow, from way the hell out there, that thing makes it all the way back to Jefferson.
Send a runner, man, back down river, build a dugout canoe, and get this prairie dog back down to Jefferson. Something like that.
It was absolutely insane what these guys did. So all of that preparation ahead of time. In the meantime, again, still being mentored by, and dude, Jefferson's your coach. Your life coach is Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
I mean, Meriwether is a badass in his own right. Even though he was military, did a lot of admin stuff, but still, Jefferson saw in him, the industry, the mentality, the possibility to persevere, etc. And Lewis jumped at the chance too, and they were talking about it.
Yeah,
they would spend days upon days drinking whiskey, and
chit-chatting about this,
about this stuff.
Yep,
dude, he was so envisioned.
Oh yeah,
and actually, man. Outside of a couple of things, he was so faithful to Jefferson's vision,
right,
the whole time. He did not say, "Oh, to hell with the old man. I'm tired of the cold. I'm going to go do this now."
Right.
You know what I mean? He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so then he's got to pick somebody
to be a second-hand man. Yeah. So his buddy Clark, another accomplished woodsman, he spent time in the military with him. So I think that was a awesome choice, because I think Clark was more of an accomplished hunter and woodsman than Lewis was. So, he found a balance.
Yeah.
And then they worked well together. their leadership styles were a little different. So there was some yin and yang there. Yeah. They didn't mirror each other, which is good. You need that. You need those nuances, those differences in order to build a good working relationship, especially when you're the only two dudes in charge, man. Whoa. Now, because they had to do some good cop, bad cop stuff. You know,
sure. Yeah. Well, this is the thing that I think, throughout this, I kept thinking of you as I was going through the story, because I said, well, I can see in another level why Mac would be interested in this, because it is a tier 1 operation.
Yep.
Right. So there was a selection process.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You had to find the right person, not just size wise, but skill wise, to put together a good team. You had to have somebody who you think could deal with the challenges and, all of this stuff. And for the most part, they only lost one guy.
And that doesn't even count because his appendix burst like shortly after they departed. So that doesn't even really, you can't even really count that. I mean, they started with 35 dudes, lost that one, sent a couple runners, but basically 33 guys, not including strap hangers.
Right.
Core Discovery traveled 8,000 miles. That's how many miles they covered, in 2 years, 4 months, 10 days. So several hard winners. Those winners sucked bad, and they suffered through starvation and all kind of ailments and plus they were working their freaking asses off. Yeah, can you imagine going up freaking river? Oh
my gosh.
In a river like the Missouri, where that flow is pretty, it's flowing well. For anybody who's crossed over the Missouri River driving, you look down at that water flow. I mean, that's a lot of flow. And they're pushing, oaring, pulling, and then, crossing their fingers that wind's going to go in the right direction too, so they can hoist the sails. Yeah. But
and oftentimes it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, so going west, they were only making 5 to 15 miles a day.
Yeah, those keel boats, which, I mean, compared to a canoe are obviously sizable, but when you're talking about that many guys, that's not a big ship, dude.
Right.
That's really, really small. And so they're having to get they would do with the big poles.
Yep.
Start from one end and pushing it along. If they couldn't get that to work, they even had to get out on the shore and literally pull the boat that way. And plus, you've also got the other boat,
the
Periogs, and then of course whatever canoes you want to use eventually. Huge. So they had to build that boat before they went.
Yeah.
Get all of those supplies together.
Design it too. They had to design it right way because there was a lot of supplies that went on that thing, and it had to be the right level of buoyancy. It had to be able to take on waves and inclement weather. And I mean, just designing that, and you could look it up on the interwebs, that design, and it's like, wow, man, this was a pretty freaking badass endeavor to design that thing, let alone build it.
Yeah.
It was like I mean, it wasn't bridge too far stuff, but we weren't building stuff like that.
No.
Not for riverine operations,
Yeah. I mean, how do you prepare for the unknown?
Right.
And they did a remarkable job. And so you have to hand it to Lewis for that preparation.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, he took like a year and a half, not just studying all of these different subjects, but then also making that list.
Yeah. I mean, the supply list has cracked me up. Like, do I take 3 boxes of fishing hooks, or should I carry one more box of fishing hooks?
Yeah.
Because ounces make pounds, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's funny because they actually had, on some supplies, they had some left over, at the end.
Yeah.
But some they went south. And then the other, I like their, how much whiskey, how much whiskey do we need to bring? I mean, they weren't getting, it was, the reward at the end of the day. What was it, like 2 gills per dude? Yeah. And a gill is, I forget, 4
ounces, I think. Yeah. 4 ounces.
But 2 gills a day, and it must have been some nasty shit. But dude, that was your reward at the end of the day. Let's make camp and get some food. Let's eat our 4 to 6 pounds of meat.
Now, of course, there was a couple of them though who got a little bit rebellious and broke in and drank a shit ton of whiskey and hammered. And they would have these literal trials on the boat.
Yeah. Yeah. They ran it. So you got to understand that, they weren't recruited to Core Discovery. they were, what's a better word for that? They weren't even, you can't even say hired, because it was almost like they were volunteering.
Yeah.
Because there was, massive risk and reward. And the reward wasn't that great at the end. They promised him land tracts.
Some cash and some land, yeah.
Yep. But they did it for the adventure, to be a part of this.
Right.
That's why they did that. They wanted to be a part of something bigger themselves. Mm-hmm. So these guys were very loyal. Even when shit got really, really, really bad, they embraced the suck, with very little pissing and moaning, and got crap done. Whether they were freezing to death or starving, they got shit done.
Right. There's no mutiny.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no mutiny. Are you kidding me? 2 years, 4 months, 10 days, no mutiny.
Yeah, you're close to starvation several times. You're freezing to death.
You're getting, you have all these Indian tribes that they ran into, and certainly there, it was massive. So but the guys who stole the whiskey, they treated it like a military operation. So those guys got punished by 50 lashes.
50 lashes, yeah.
Yep. They had they had that one guy fall asleep on guard duty too.
That was the funniest part because when he said, "I plead guilty to lying down. I don't plead guilty to falling asleep."
Yeah, yeah.
Like they're like, yeah, whatever, and they beat him.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not going to fly.
Well, because you could. How important is guard duty?
Oh my God, dude, they sentinels, bro.
Yeah, that's your most important task.
Yeah,
and you don't have it all night. You're running a shift,
right?
When you're on guard duty, you're running a shift. It's not like, well, tonight is your turn not to sleep.
Yeah.
It's a couple hours,
right?
So you suck that up. Yeah, you get woke up at 2 a.m. to pull your 2-hour shift. Yeah, it's gonna suck, and it's probably raining out and it's cold and it's windy. But man, you got to keep your head on a swivel because you are in. Once again, saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths.
Oh, yeah, man.
Let alone a bunch of freaking savages.
So they bring, it is sort of a motley crew that they get together. But again, this leadership duo, which is really fascinating to me, the friendship of Lewis and Clark ahead of time.
Yeah.
And when you, again, read or hear the letters of, Lewis's appeal to Clark initially, he's like, there is no one I would think to be by my side to do this. And Clark writes back, ditto, bro.
Bro, I got your six. And he, I think he pleaded with Jefferson to promote him to equal rank.
To captain.
Right. So that way, because he didn't want to outrank him.
It's because he was older and he he had a higher rank.
Yeah. Yeah. But he wanted to be on, level.
Yeah. Now, of course, Congress did not approve that.
Right.
Especially the Federalists.
Yep.
They were just pissing on this whole thing. They didn't believe in this operation.
Right. Yeah.
But as far as the men were concerned, they were both captain. It was Captain Lewis and it was Captain Clark. And it was never referred to any other way. But yeah, it was talk about that relationship. You get this thing where like Lewis is the brainchild, and his eyes are everywhere. Mm-hmm. But you can tell Clark is kind of the muscle.
Yep. X-ring. Yep. Sure is. Yep.
And he's got the backup muscle with York.
Yep.
His big old.
Yeah, manservant.
Manservant.
Yep.
Black guy who fascinated the Indians.
Oh man, that was some great. When it came to establishment rapport, they had York, they had Seaman, the Newfoundland dog. That was Lewis's dog, which is gigantic black dog.
Sacagawea.
They had Sacagawea.
Now there's
I've heard it both ways.
How is it going to be officially pronounced in the University of Badassery?
I'm going to call it Sacagawea. That's what
Sacagawea.
Yep. Which translates to bird woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course she eventually had a baby.
Along the way, man.
16 years old. She carried him through the Bitterroots.
I know. She carried that baby
through the Rocky Mountains, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Where men were freezing to death with in the moccasins, bro.
Right. Yeah.
How do you go through the Rocky? They said they put rags around their feet.
Yep.
And walk through the Rocky Mountains in snow where you can't see trails.
Right. Because there were no trails.
Where even the guys were like, I don't know where the hell we're going. All I see is white, bro. Yeah. But you're walking through that with moccasins, and you're what the Indians said would be there like a couple days or whatever to get across these mountains.
Right.
And it was like 180 something miles.
Oh man. when they were going through the Rockies.
To the bitters, yeah.
And how disappointing with that, they'd get to a top of a ridge line, thinking that they're going to see the ocean, and nothing but 3 more ridge lines. They get to that third one, get to the top of it, peek it out, nothing but 3 more ridge lines. And that went over and over and over. I mean, the heartbreak there. That was one time where his guys were like, bro, this has got to end at some point.
What do you do? Because you can't, can you turn back? You're so far in at that point. Now, Mac, you have been through some, seasons of deprivation, both imposed and some just you didn't have,
right,
any choice in the matter. Yeah. How do you look at something like this?
Right here?
Now just that, like for example, that particular season with the Rockies.
I think I have a greater appreciation for it, when I read about that, because I've been extremely cold, extremely tired, like exhaustion, and knowing that I have to go on, I have to drive on.
Right.
I have to go further because I had a timeline or whatever it was. But so I look at what they did, and it is it's
because obviously you had more gear.
Yeah. Better gear, better equipment, better food sources.
Better whiskey.
Everything was better. Everything.
Better air rifle.
Yeah. They had freaking nothing, they're drawing the maps and they're navigating off of stellar navigation, the sun and sex, stuff like that.
I'm trying to remember what a certain time in Connecticut or whatever is how they determined, I forget how they did it. They were doing the math based on what it would be or something in Connecticut. Yep. They could tell something. I can't remember what it was, but it was just hilarious.
Because of lines of latitude.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was a latitude. Yeah.
Yep. So, but they knew, even that, just knowing, latitude and longitude, and not. It's not something that most people can fathom, let alone somebody like me who's been in those environments and has been extremely exhausted and starving my ass off for what I'm I hadn't eaten in a day, so I'm starving. These guys went days and they were like, well, got to take another horse down.
Yeah.
To save the men, we got to freaking.
Well, that was said so much of how much, obviously the killing the elk, they sent hunters out. Guys who were very capable at that.
Yep.
What they could snag there in that day. But then they would kill the colts.
Right.
For that. And so what you don't, dogs.
Right. Yeah, they ate dozens and dozens of dogs along the way.
So, you can imagine, it was like a butcher site. Mm-hmm. How far did they go from camp to butcher these things?
Right.
How do you kill the colt? Do you shoot it? Do you slit its throat?
Right.
How does that go down? Mm-hmm. And then how do you open that thing up? Because it's not like you got all the apparatuses to hang that thing up like a deer, man. Right. It's a freaking horse, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And just knowing how to butcher it.
Right. Well, that was one thing. Like all of them were, the guys they recruited were all accomplished hunters. Some were better than others. Like if you take somebody like Coulter,
right,
for instance. That guy was a hunting machine.
Right.
The tracker that they ran into with Chicago way up, Charbonneau. Yeah. He was a very accomplished hunter. So these guys knew what they were doing. They were good fishermen too.
Yeah.
For the longest time, they were thriving.
Yeah.
They had plenty of sustenance. And not only was it meat, but they knew that they had to supplement their diet with greens and stuff.
Yeah, they did.
They were picking stuff out of the earth, and eating that because they knew the importance of nutrition, which is, it's sort of almost counterintuitive to how we would think of people back then. It's like, what the hell do you know about nutrition? They knew about that stuff.
Right.
Hydration and all of that.
Salt.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Salt was so important, not just for spicing. They knew they needed salt.
Yep. Knew they needed salt. Yeah, it's amazing. But the amount of intake, they were eating like 4 to 6 pounds of meat per person a day.
Yeah.
And they were burning that up, man, just burning it up. They had just supplements. What did they have? Corn and stuff like that, on board. So they were able to make biscuits or what have you.
And he had some soup that he brought with him.
Yep. They had the soups. Yep. And the whiskey. I had the whiskey.
Now, if they'd have had your soup, bro.
There would have been more lashings because people would have been stealing it.
If they'd had some Taconic Distillery bourbon and Max soup, some Invader in the morning.
Yep.
That's all they needed. So yeah, I mean, this crew is obviously an elite group.
Yeah.
And so, they had to think through some of this. And yes, like you alluded to, there was the adventure aspect that drew these guys to it. And just, it amazes me that they understood how well everybody knew what was going on. Like when they got back, for example, just to jump ahead, when they got back to St. Louis, for that first time, there was like 5,000 people there to greet them. How the hell did they know?
Right. Yeah.
Who knew?
Who knew? Right.
And they announced it, and 5,000 people were there to greet you as you pull up.
Yeah, they didn't send a telegram.
No. So how did that go down?
Right.
So it just, a lot of that
there was
amazes
probably
me.
just some runner, on a horse, way up there and said, "Holy crap, I could see these boats coming," and he just freaking hauled ass and made an announcement.
Yeah, I was
days ahead.
I did a series this week in my coaching group called Hardship, and that because of the luxury under which we live. We won't describe it as luxury, but this is luxury in Indies compared to any generation that's ever lived before us. But because of that, we don't suffer hardship for the most part, real hardship. And because of that, we are a weaker people. Therefore, we fly off the handle if the cable goes out.
Yep.
Fly off the handle if the package is late or something like that. But I mentioned just how long it took correspondence to get across the country. So, by the time Jefferson would get a letter back or something from Lewis, I mean, they were like 2 months ahead, moved on. So Jefferson's like, well, I'm sure they're at the Pacific now.
Right.
He's like, no, dude, he's at the bottom of the mountains.
Yeah, man. They had it hard even before, they got to the hard terrain because they had to establish rapport with all these different Indian tribes. Right. And one of the cool things, you mentioned it briefly, is they exercised peace through superior firepower. Right. They were like the first ones who ever did that.
Right.
And they would demonstrate, they had a routine, all right, here's a tribe. So let's get the presents ready. Let's show York.
Yep.
Bring the dog up. And then one of the first things that Lewis did was demonstrated his badass air rifle. And when I talk about that to people, they said, "What do you mean air rifle?" I said, "Yeah, repeating air rifle. They could pump this up to 800 PSI and shoot up to 46 caliber balls and through a rifled. And this thing was accurate to 100 yards.
And it would hold 22 rounds.
Yeah. Yep. Hold 22 rounds, and they could shoot up to 40 with one. Now, the amount, and it took forever to pump it up, and it was kind of like for lack of better terms, like the pump you'd have to pump up your bicycle tire.
Right.
It was similar to that. But it was made by an Italian guy, and it's kind of still a mystery because they made him for, like, this Italian guy made him for Napoleon.
Okay.
And it's a mystery still on how that one made it. But every time they would run into a tribe, that was the first thing they would do. Bust out the air rifle and say, "Look what we got." And the Indians would be blown away. And what they didn't know is, are there one of them? Or are there 33 of them up here? Does each man have one?
Right. Because we're dead.
Right. We're not going to mess with that because, damn, this thing makes no sound, no flash, no smoke.
Yeah, we have to reload.
Right.
They can't.
And this thing is accurate. Yeah. So I thought that was freaking badass. I mean, it wasn't like, "Look what we got. We could jack you up." But that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
Well, like, hey, look at this fun toy I have.
He would also shoot the cannon off the top of the key.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And then he'd give him a flag and some medals and whatnot.
Give me a Jefferson Peace Medal.
Jefferson Peace Medal. And then tell them about their new great father.
Oh, yeah. That's on the peace medals was Jefferson's likeness.
And the other side of it, like the two hands.
Yep, the two hands shaking with the peace pipes crossing. And they knew how to say that, in different dialects, the big father. This is the picture of the big father. He welcomes you and all this stuff. And you're a member of, we are one now.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What do you mean we're one, bro? We're doing just fine out here." In our teepees.
Well, I tell you what, man, this is also a good story for someone to get a good perspective. Because they encountered so many different tribes in succession.
Yep.
Where it's not just a study on one particular tribe. There's a romanticizing of the Native Americans.
Yep.
You know what I mean? To where the people who speak the most about it know the least about it,
Yep.
And so these were some of these tribes were totally uncool.
Oh yeah, man. And they didn't run into the brutal ones,
Yeah.
Like
Well, they avoided
like
those
Comanches or Apaches.
Who was the Latonic Sioux or something?
Yeah,
who
right.
Who were even further north?
Right. The Sioux were further north than the Blackfoot.
And the Blackfoot.
Yep. Those guys were badass, man. They didn't jack around. But the Plains Indians were hurting for certain. They ran into one of the first tribes they run into. It was early on. They were starving. They were all starving.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah.
One of the members from the Corps went out and shot a deer. Word came back.
The Mandans?
Hey, the Mandans. Yeah. Hey, we got a deer. And all these Indians took foot and just boogied to where that kill site was. And they ripped that thing open with stones and they were sucking they were sucking the intestines dry. Yeah. Just right into their mouths. Yeah. Just, this is the softest thing that I could eat right now, whatever's in these intestines.
Yeah. Because, the Corps of Discovery have been cooking their meat.
Yeah.
They literally ate it like dogs would eat it.
Yes.
Or a lion.
Yep. Just like a lion would eat it. And they went for the softest thing first. Just let me squeeze out whatever's in his guts.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. To go from them to the Nez Perce, to the Shoshones, to some of the Sioux. It was I
wrote some of them down here. The Crow, Osage, Cheyenne, Sioux, Nez Perce, Blackfoot, Shoshone, Mandan, Yakima, Spokane. But those are some of them.
Yeah. And you don't realize, because these guys are encountering terrain that no white man has really ever seen before.
Yeah.
So, obviously that area of the country is breathtaking beauty-wise, and Lewis does record that. Mm-hmm. But you're not able to do the math until they start talking about how they go to the rolling plains and they're like, okay, there's no timber.
Right. None.
So there's no deer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's like, okay, well, look how beautiful these plains are. Well, yeah, well, we're screwed because I don't know how long this goes on and we don't got things, the stuff that we can use from, what you would have if you had plenty of trees around and all of that. So
yeah, we have no ability to make shelter, build fire, any of that. Yeah, it's beautiful, but no food, no fire, no shelter. Damn.
Or it's like, there was that point where before they got into the Rockies, when they was desperately looking for the Shoshones because they needed horses.
Right.
Because he knew, I can't get all my shit that I've been toting around dragging canoes. I can't get all of that across these mountains on back. We don't have the wherewithal to do that. We need horses. Yep. So they've got to find these things. Well, how are you going to find horses? You got to find somebody who's herded them.
Yeah.
That's going to be an Indian, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a remarkable story too, because when Lewis finally comes across those group of women, older women and some younger girls.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And they're like by a little river, creek or something. And so he lays down his rifle, because obviously they're scared to death.
Yeah.
And they looked, and from the distance, he was like, what, maybe 30 yards or something? And they were like, well, we can't run. Mm-hmm. And they just resigned themselves to die. And so they just kind of put their stuff down and dropped their heads.
Yeah.
Just like, he's going to kill us and there's nothing we can do. And so, but then not too far was like 100 warriors.
Right. Yeah.
Next thing you know, man, they've got this big meeting going on. And so,
there was only a couple of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they were
but dude, and now to think about now how deep they are.
Right.
They are deep. And so
into uncharted territory.
So they come back with him to hook up with Clark and everybody else. And they're all sitting down there trying to communicate and meet. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, what's her name? Sacagawea realizes, that's my brother.
That's my brother. Yep.
Dude.
Right.
What are the chances of that?
Right. Figure the odds.
That's my brother.
Because she was sold at a young age,
because she was only 16 when she started on the voyage. So
right. And it was years before that she was sold or traded to Charbonneau.
Charbonneau.
Yeah, Charbonneau. Yeah.
French.
Yeah. So she was young. So there was years of separation there.
Yeah.
Years.
So you're going through this land and it's like, who are you going to bump into? Mm-hmm. So I'm traversing through uncharted territory. Oh, I bumped into my brother.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So it just happens to, and so Lewis writes, the emotion and the outpouring was just, she was sobbing uncontrollably. And So you talk about a stroke of luck.
Damn, bro. That was, yeah, without that right there, that's one of the reasons she is so highly regarded, because without that right there, and then, of course, when she saved a bunch of the journals and stuff, when the
Freaky Boy.
Yeah, flipped over. And I think she was still pregnant, and she swam the rapids and policed up a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
And brought it back to shore. But then her ability to understand different dialects too, so communication. And then when she saw that chunk of terrain, she recognized a ridge line.
Yeah,
she said, "Oh, that's it right there. We need to go that way." So, yeah, she was pretty instrumental on several accounts.
Yeah, it was. Some of the scholars do note this is what there was a forward thinking with Lewis and Clark about stuff. Because again, this is just at the outset of the 19th century.
Right.
So you're still like a century away from a woman's right to vote.
Right.
All this kind of crap. And so
brings up a point too.
When they had that one vote about when they finally had gotten to the West Coast, they were in that bay and they had to decide where to go to camp for the winter. And so instead of making the decision, Lewis and Clark, they
put it to a vote.
And she and York were included.
Yep. First time in our country that a woman ever voted, and first time a black ever voted.
Was with Lewis and Clark.
Yep.
And again, these little tiny things in the story are so amazing. Even when, again, they're going to Missouri because they're trying to find a passage, right? A water passage across. But then they start getting interested in where the hell does this river end? Because if there's not a passage all the way across, well, then where does the river go?
Right.
The river's got to go somewhere because it's pouring shit down all the way to New Orleans, man.
Right.
I mean, so where does this river go? And then Lewis, on his own, walking up there. And, because then it started to dissipate, and things, you started getting this to the very low-lying waters. And so he's following this Missouri until he gets to this brooklet coming down from the mountains.
Right.
And he stops and he's like, this is it.
This is it. This is the beginning of the Missouri River
right here. And he stops.
This thing is 10 inches deep and a foot and a half wide.
So he it's a religious moment for him, and he steps down and he takes that drink of water and he celebrates that.
Yeah.
And he says, just this coldest, cleanest water he's ever had.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you're just like, wow, all of these, I mean, you were like what you described, you get up to this ridge of a mountain thinking, okay, it's got to end here.
Right.
And then it's Rocky Mountains, snow-covered Rocky Mountains as far as you can see.
Yeah.
But with that, there was all of this first-time experience and wonder.
And a lot of what I dug about it too was the the nature aspect, all the first-time things, not just the prairie dog, but all the birds. Because Lewis was a very good artist. Yeah. And so he would sketch any species that he couldn't catch and kill for a sample. Like. Yeah. He would sketch them down and talk about, the detail that went into explaining and describing a particular woodpecker, was ridiculous. And then they saw, new animals of amazement, like the pronghorn. Yeah. It was like, what is that thing? Which, it's our antelope, and it's the fastest land animal in the northern hemisphere. And, they ended up killing a couple of them to eat them, but also to study them. Yeah. No, easy task killing a pronghorn. I mean, they don't.
Have you seen those in the jungle?
Oh, yeah. I see them all the time. Yeah. Anytime you go west, you just look out into like the prairies, open grasslands.
Yeah, he was like, I had the head of a goat and this and that, Yeah. They're actually beautiful, man.
They're really
They actually look more like an African kind of animal, don't they?
Yep. And then how about their first grizz encounter?
Holy crap, dude.
They filled this thing full of several 50 cal holes. And I think the killing shot was the guy in the river. One of them ran into the river.
As Lewis.
Yep. And that was the killing shot. Freaking boosh. It was pretty close. I'm guessing like 20 yards. But they ended up doing an autopsy on him.
Oh, yeah,
They took it apart and they realized that, man, all of those 50 cal bullets went through vitals.
Yeah, there was lung shots, heart shots, and he was still going.
Yep.
Actually, Lewis did get caught in the river, but I don't think he when he was caught in the river, luckily that bear ran away.
Right. Oh, right.
Because the bear was too close. He's like, I can't reload.
Yep.
His only was run in the water. Like the bear's not going to go after you.
Exactly.
He scoops salmon out of that thing every day, man.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he did, but that bear stopped, turned around, and boogied.
Yep.
That's one of those just God was watching over you, bro.
Yeah, man.
Because holy crap.
But they logged everything, new species of trout. There's a good entry somewhere about all of the new species that they uncovered.
Yeah.
And there are dozens and dozens of them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of different species, fish, flora, fauna, birds, all of it. There's tons of it. I mean, they were adamant about collecting that data because that was one of their implied tasks too.
Yeah.
Initially. So they had a list of implied tasks. Discover that stuff, trade routes. Hey, by the way, try to find a Northwest Passage if you can while you're up there. You got all this other shit to do, but see if there's a waterway from the Pacific down to Ussens. Bro, man, unfreaking believable.
Well, and that was, another one of the amazing things about Lewis was that we call it journals, but these were, a lot of it was scientific writing, technical writing. And it's hard enough to get us to sit down and write something.
Yeah.
Okay, in comfort.
Right.
And this guy has been exhausted and spent all day doing crap.
Well, because he was putting in, granted, I don't mean to cut you off there, but think about it. The boats are going upriver, like I said, 5 to 15 miles a day, upriver. On a good day, 15 miles if they had the wind. Lewis is on the deck. He's on the ground.
Right.
Zigzagging.
Yeah.
Looking for species, and he's mapping stuff out. He's drawing all the maps. He's writing while he's going. He was putting in 25 miles a day.
Yeah.
And this is, he didn't have Sorel boots and stuff like that.
No.
I mean, he was hoofing it every freaking day. So yeah, to come back at night, every freaking night, and to pen and quill on parchment, these journals by
candlelight.
Yeah, candlelight or lantern light, whatever it was. And then to seal them all individually in wax. And damn, man.
Can you imagine those were Instagram posts every day? all the boot people you'd have to tag. Hey, dude, what are those boots?
All the boot people you have to tag, yeah.
Hey, what quill is that, man?
Yeah. And then today culminated by killing a grizzly bear. I need a shout out to the manufacturer of the specific rifle, the powder, the projectile. And
of course, he's got to tag Clark in everything.
Right, he's got to tag Clark, of course, man. I mean, forget about it, He's got to make mention of Sacagawea, too.
Oh, man. And yeah, so she gives birth, and they actually called Jean Baptiste. And Clark takes that kid.
Yeah, right.
And her other kid. She had a daughter afterwards, and he raised them both, man.
Yeah. They were stand-up dudes, bro. I got to tell you. They were badass. It was a different time, different generation. Those guys grew up hard.
Right.
It was part of their upbringing.
Right.
So, hoofing it 25 miles a day,
Yeah.
It's run-of-the-mill shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, today I didn't eat, but tomorrow I will.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's deer and fish over there, and I'll just sit down and gorge 10 pounds of meat into me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they would eat like this. The Indians turned them on all those roots.
Right.
And one time it made them sick as
right.
The whole crew was down, dude. But yeah, I mean, it was, how do you think of miles covered? How do you measure that amount of distance? How do you say we covered 15 miles today? How do you know that?
Yeah, right.
How do you pick where you're going to stop?
How about, remember when they had the portage and they cached a bunch of gear?
Yeah.
Now they come to a fork in the river.
Oh, yeah.
Which way is it?
Yeah.
Which way? And they did a separation. And there was months in this separation. But the instructions were, hey, let's just rendezvous back here.
Right here.
And they both go in hundreds of miles, in different directions.
Lewis goes like north and comes back down.
I mean, and they linked back up at basically a 10-digit grid coordinate. And then a bunch of their caches made it. When they cached crap, took to walk in, horseback and over the Rockies, come back, and ended up figuring out, all right, this is where we cash in our shit. Well, how do you remember that, man?
Yeah. All buried.
It's been a half a year.
Yeah.
You know, and the stuff is still good.
Yeah. So you buried that very well.
Yeah. I mean, but they would take all that time, you know, with sap and sealing everything up, and unfreaking believable, man.
And Clark would leave like notes on trees.
Yeah, right.
They find like after 2 weeks.
Right.
Well, and Clark left us a note, and he's saying he left at this date, and blah, blah, blah. So we hooked up.
Yep.
It's like, what?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean, what kind of technology is that? I mean, just this amazing resourcefulness, ingenuity, a stomach for risk.
Dude, unbelievable. And the patience thing too was pretty good. And, you know, the leadership style kept keeping the men fired up.
Yeah.
Like when they first saw the Columbia River.
Right.
They were like, oh, hell yeah. You know, and I mean, that reignited everybody's fire. So let's build some canoes and stuff. But the river got wider, and they were like, when is this river going to end? Oh, this has got to be it. This has got to be the Pacific because it's so wide. And nope, it's not. And they just went on and on and on, you know. But thankfully, at that time, they were going with the current.
Yeah. Until they got to the falls.
Yep.
And
well, no, I'm talking Columbia River.
Okay.
So over the Rockies, Columbia River, and then when they linked up with, it wasn't the Yakima Indians on the Columbia River. It was the Chinooks.
Yeah.
They were fish eaters, and Lewis and Clark were sick of salmon. They were sick of salmon,
and it was the best salmon in ever anywhere.
They were like, oh man, we got to have meat. We got to go kill some deer and elk, man, because this fish is getting old. You'd think that after, you know, a couple or a year of just chomping down on the most heinous just meat, that salmon would become very welcome.
Yeah,
they're like, oh,
grilled
man,
over the fire. So easy to clean and prepare.
Sucks. Yeah, this sucks bad. This pink freaking flaky meat falling off the bone, all rich in vitamins and oils, and
it would give them all the essential fats they needed.
Yeah,
protein.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been as filling, but you just eat a crap ton of them.
Oh yeah. Weren't they? From what I recall, they were like appalled by the Chinooks at the sight of them.
Yeah.
They were not the most attractive of the American Indians, you know, because some of them, they were like, man, these people are so attractive. And then these people are gruesome.
Well, yeah.
And he would write it down in a journal.
Yeah, he would. Now, how many, I mean, what about all these guys that were banging all the Indian?
Right. Well, the thing is, so, you know, what happened was some of the trappers were banging it before too. And these Indian chicks were carrying syphilis and stuff like that, because these Euro trappers, you know, had unclean weenies. Yep. So they do? Spread mercury.
I don't know nothing about that, Mac, but
spread mercury on it.
Put mercury.
Oh man,
it actually helped them out.
Yeah, it would work. Whatever they did, it worked.
But those guys, whenever they'd go, I mean, they'd get up, and you know, when they would stay with an Indian tribe, they would stay for a while,
right? And
so these guys would immediately start hooking up with the women.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, of course, the Indians were they would push their girls,
right? Because they wanted that magic seed.
Yeah, they thought there was something that could be transferred through sex from what the white man had.
Right. Yep.
And so those guys were like, all right, if they believe,
I'll do it for my country if I have to, you know. I mean, I'm part of this corps, so therefore I'm going to get it on.
So that's why they named the dog Seaman.
Yep. Now, cool part too is I think coming back, Seaman, for those who don't know, so big black Newfoundland dog, was stolen by one of the Indian tribes. So 3 of them came, I think during the night, stole them. They instantly found out. You know, Lewis was like,
he was pissed.
It was I think the closest time they ever got into combat.
Yeah, because
they went with a small party and said, if you don't return our dog, we're going to kill all of you. Mm-hmm.
Burn the place to the ground.
We're going to kill every freaking one of you.
Scorched earth, bro.
And they handed him right back. They're like, hell with that, man.
His dog back.
Yeah,
they had done that. That was another thing, is how many times they tried to steal from them.
Right.
One time, one of the Fields brothers woke up, and you could hear his brother saying, "Let go of my rifle! Let go of my rifle!"
Yeah.
And then another one was Indians were taking the horses, trying to take the horses, and then they actually, so we knifed them.
Right.
knifed him, and then Lewis shot the other guy right through the stomach.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and then they went kind of Vietnam,
Oh,
bro,
right,
because they like laying down death cards and shit.
Yep. Let this be a warning.
Because it's Blackfeet country.
Right. And the Blackfeet, they're badass, man, you know? Yeah.
And so and then they booged.
Yep. And it's very valid to do something like that. If you're going to, if you're going to defend your property by doing something heinous, it sends a strong message to that dude that
Right.
I am nobody to be trifled with.
Right.
You do it. This is what's going to happen to you right here.
Now,
so,
was there? I know.
let's splay them out for everybody to see.
I know they did the death cards in Vietnam. How did that start? What's the logic?
I forget. If somebody told me, I'd go, oh, right.
So you guys weren't doing death cards?
No, hell no. No. No, that's for Vietnam days.
Those guys were just
Yeah.
we're gonna make a statement.
Yeah.
Death from above. Yeah. So that was the one time where they disobeyed what Jefferson wanted. He did not want that. He didn't want any confrontation and end up in death. So they did kill a couple of the Indians there, but then they hit the high road, got out of there as quick as they could, because if it's Blackfeet come across this and see that, because they knew what the display would have meant, because they put the metal around his neck, the dead guy's neck, and so they would have come, at you full bore. So yeah, that was crazy. But going back to the river, when they finally do get close, and
I was just going to bring this up. I know what you're going to say.
What they started to smell.
Well, it was that Coulter guy, right? You're talking about cow shit, or
no? And he started to smell the Pacific.
Oh, you're talking the other way, right? All right.
Yeah,
I thought you were saying coming
back.
Oh
no. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
All right. Yeah. They started to smell it, right?
Yeah.
In the Pacific. Yeah.
Yeah. They could. He could tell
and then hear it.
Well, they could smell the salt,
right?
And said we got to be, and then they could start to hear it.
Yep.
And then they get out there, and they're essentially in the bay of the Pacific Ocean. Landed. We've arrived. We've done everything. It's badass. This is awesome.
Yep.
And then storms come.
Yeah.
Like nobody's business, and they're stuck.
Yep.
And they got to build that's when they made that. They had that vote to decide where they're going to do. And then they built, what was it, Camp Fort something, Clapstop or something?
Yeah. Yeah. They built, there were several. I believe that was the one on the Pacific. Yeah. Clapstop.
Now, have you ever seen anything that was of a replica or a drawing of what that might have looked like?
Nope. I mean, they've got a bunch of the drawings and replicas at that Lewis and Clark Museum in the Great Falls. So let's
go after this.
Yeah, but I think in that museum, I've never seen a mock-up or anything like that.
Because what did they have to build with?
They were resourceful. I mean, when they built winter camps, I mean, they built fortified log cabins. They didn't mess around. No kidding. Yeah. They didn't just live in canvas. Yeah, they were there.
They went into Amish mode, bro.
Yep. They went in to hang out and to stay comfortable.
Wow. Yeah. So, again, it's almost like you couldn't have written a story like this.
No. And no movie can ever do it justice.
No.
Because the movie's got to be 6 hours long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one of the things I appreciated about Gettysburg, the movie Gettysburg, is that, it's like 4 hours.
Yep. Right.
Long. You got this is like an intermission.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But even that, it doesn't even come close to scratching. That's just scratching the surface of one battle, let alone, the entire war or something like this. For this trip, which was how long total? 2
years, 4 months, 10 days. I believe that's the right number.
Yeah.
8,000 miles total travel. 33 dudes who were constant. None of them freaking died.
Right. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because there's so many ways to die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could when they're going through the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
The steep, like the one what it was, Clark who said, somebody said, Clark said, yeah, it's steeper than a gable of a house, man.
Right. Yeah. And they're dragging shit. They're pulling stuff. I mean, anything could happen. Every time they had to do a portage or a portage, as they called it at the Lewis and Clark Museum.
Portage.
I kept saying portage. It's a portage.
We're going to portage to the pub after this.
Yep, portage. But even those were harrowing.
Yeah.
You know, dragging those boats up cliffs. Yeah, unbelievable why they didn't. Not only that, but I didn't read about even like a broken femur.
No.
You know, or anything like that.
Yeah, nothing like that.
I mean, they had ailments. They got sick. They starved.
Really,
they
really
froze.
sick.
You know, but man, I mean, there was, you know, cuts and gashes and bruises galore.
And venereal disease.
Yep.
We were like, oh, wait, there's venereal disease. So you guys were freaking raging like Jamaicans out there, man.
Yeah.
They did because they partied. And whenever they would get in, because the one guy was a great fiddle player.
Right.
And the Indians would trip out.
Yeah.
So they would go into these big powwows, man, and they would rock all night long. And they said like till like 1 a.m. and they're just dancing. And so they would get up and they would fiddle play and do all that white boy dance. And then the Indians would get up and they would do their thing.
Their powwow dance.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they're smoking and...
Yeah, because they brought a bunch of tobacco too, so they had quality tobacco with them. Yep.
Now there's a lot of disappointed Indians at their initial attempts at trade.
Right.
You know, they were like...
Yeah, what is this glass? What are these glass beads and shit, man?
Yeah.
We want booze. You know, we want guns. You know, the big things.
They knew.
Yeah.
So what, I mean...
Well, because the initial guys, they had seen some white men before, like trappers and stuff.
Yeah.
So they knew what white men were capable of bringing. Like, yeah, but we got a long way to go, and we got a lot of people to see, so we got to spread this wealth out, you know, pretty evenly.
Who was the tribe that they were talking to, and they're announcing how they're going to basically finance all the other tribes? And these guys were like, so you're basically saying you're going to equip our enemies.
Right, right.
And we're supposed to be excited about this.
Yep.
It had to be one of the Sioux or something like that.
I believe so. And also, if I recollect, the first time they saw Sioux, they were blown away at their ability to ride a horse.
Yeah.
Because of the bareback and everything. They were like, holy crap, look at these guys. They were born.
And killing buffalo.
Yeah.
They like killed like 100 buffalo and they killed like 23 with their guns.
Right. Yeah.
And they would come up to them and the horses knew what to do.
Right.
And they would just fill them full of arrows.
Yep.
Yeah, it was funny. Also, was when they would do some of their crazy portages and all this stuff, that all the Indians would gather along the coastline to watch them fail.
To watch them fail. Yeah. So, we can't wait to see this.
Let's watch these idiots try to pull this off. Lewis and Clark, my ass. How's that passage going, bro?
Yeah.
But it was, man. It was such a, it's what's difficult about this story, Mac, is to find a single word, that encapsulates what it means and what it represents.
I think Ambrose did well with Undaunted Courage.
Yeah.
Because damn, man, talk about going into the unknown. Whew, for that long. You are out there flapping, bro.
Yeah, because that was, obviously took it from what Jefferson had written, right? Where he said, he's describing them and he says, courage undaunted. And it's his description of these cats. But Jefferson recognized it, but I guess it's the matter of factness at which they contemplated, prepared, and pursued and persisted in this journey, that there was stopping was not an option.
Right.
Going back was not an. They never. I don't remember that debate. I don't remember them having.
I think they would have died trying.
Yeah.
Pretty sure they would have died trying. Yeah, there was no retreat. This was their mish, bro.
Golly.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to create that sort of thing. Obviously we do great things every day. People do great things every day. So there's character. And one of the things I don't like to do is, it's easy. The easiest thing for us to say is, everybody today is just weak and they were so bad. Whatever, man. Listen, if you lived back then, you would have probably been able to do. But you know what? If you read the story, the context of the story, which Ambrose provides you, man, there was crooked politicians, corrupt people, white, black, Indian, all of the above, man. Derelicts, harlots, thieves, idiots,
Yep.
morons, lazy, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Just exactly like today.
Exactly like today. There's really no difference. So it does come down to the character of the individual. But, it's too easy to criticize in that regard because there were bad sides to this too. I mean, you consider how Lewis ultimately ended up.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, it's kind of easy to associate with because that's all he knew for that long. I mean, he had focus and a mission, so he had purpose. Right. So imagine having that much purpose and doing something that grandiose for that long. It's an accomplishment that cannot be replicated. Right. I don't think ever again. And then going from 100 miles an hour to 0.
Yeah.
And having none of that. None of your dudes, none of the purpose, none of the focus.
Right.
Having none of that.
And then given his gig was governor of Louisiana.
Right.
For the most part. You know what I mean? Well, just obviously the St. Louis being the centerpiece of everything, but that whole thing was under his governorship. Right. And of course he's got, Clark there, kind of head of Indian Affairs and all of that. He gets bumped up eventually Brigadier General and so much for the rank thing. But it's just when he gets back, he gets lost, man.
Yep. Deep state of depression, ends up killing himself.
So now you can obviously...
He failed several times. He tried. He was bound and determined.
Yeah,
because he shot himself in the head, didn't kill him. Because it missed, it went through whatever. Shot himself in the face. Now he's still not dead. Yeah. He ends up gut stabbing himself.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And as he's dying, he tells the lady, the innkeeper, he says, I'm so hard to die.
Yeah.
He's like, apparently, bro.
Yeah.
But he starts to fall apart because, I mean, the whole thing was about all of this written material that he brought back. That was the thing, like, that was what could not be compromised.
Right.
That had to be protected at all. Beyond your life, that had to be protected. I think if they were going to die, they would have chosen somebody to take the letters back. I would take the journals back, right? That was the non-negotiable in all of this. So, and that's what Jefferson's waiting for. So he finally gets all of this stuff. Well, the whole world knows about this expedition by the time they get back. And this obviously has to be published. And all of a sudden, Lewis turns into this foot dragger and won't do anything. And so they're waiting. And then other people, you don't realize because there's so much attention gets put on him and then secondarily Clark. But there was Gass, who was journaling every single day. But you would have these swaths of time, like upwards of a year.
Right.
Where Lewis didn't write down anything.
Right.
Now, Ambrose and I think Ken Burns and a few others were talking about the depression thing was the reason. Dude, I didn't buy it. That doesn't buy it. I can explain a week.
Right.
That can explain a few days or something like that. It doesn't explain a year, especially because Clark had journaled about what happened that day, every day, except for 10 days.
Right.
And then he went back and filled in those days, and then Gass had done it every day, and some of the other guys did. The Gass published his early on, and they didn't want to. Jefferson was not happy about that. Lewis was not happy about that because that means it's cutting into his profits and all that stuff. But Lewis still wouldn't do anything. So to me, the depression thing does not make sense. To me, I look at it as because Clark, and I'm obviously, my knowledge of this is cursory, but I'm just looking at it from a human. The depression thing does not make sense. I would look at it as because I don't think that Lewis thought the journaling about what happened that day was as important as the scientific material that he was getting. And that didn't have to be daily. That just had to be right.
Right.
Right. And I think it's because Clark clocked every day, except for 10. I think he knew Clark was covering that shit. I don't think he felt like it was necessary. He did it because he, probably had it on his heart at times to describe specific days. But, he knew Clark was doing it. I don't think depression explains a year of not writing, in a journal. I think he was focused on the scientific aspects. And so, again, it goes on and Jefferson never gets his material. Jefferson eventually goes out of office. And so now he lacks that presidential power to back him up, and he's lost, man.
Lost soul.
He wants a chick.
You're right.
He had like this one chick he had in mind out there, and he named a river after her.
Yeah.
Remember that? You know? And of course, she turned on. I mean, how big a celebrity is Meriwether Lewis?
None bigger.
And he cannot get a woman if his life depended on it. So he must have been a bit of a challenging personality. So he's going to live, with Clark, but then Clark hooks up with Judith Hancock or something like that. And so, Clark stays with him for a while. And then like Eddie Wife is just going to be like, how long is this jackass going to live here? Yeah. She doesn't care about no Lewis.
Right.
That's her house, bro. So he's got to bail. He's living in border houses. He accumulates debt.
Right.
Nobody
will cover his back on that debt either.
Because they can't get that damn big white back. I dude, how you go on and on and on, and his name keeps coming up. We got to get this Indian back. Because remember, they kept telling all the Indians whenever they would visit him, hey, you want to go back and meet the Great Father? So some of these chiefs would literally get on boats and go back to meet Jefferson, and somehow they got him out there. Well, Lewis is financing all of this back and forth and all of that. So he's doing what he did under Jefferson, which was these drafts.
Right. Yep.
You know what I mean? Just saying, hey, have an open ticket, have an open check, so I can.
Yep. Nobody would cover a six on that.
No, nobody did. Nope. And so next thing, he's screwed now with owing thousands of dollars
to the government.
He's got to pay for it. He's got to get this Indian back.
Yep.
And then he had that. What was his name? Bass or something? His
I don't recall.
When he was governor.
Oh yeah.
His right hand guy who was just a total. Annoying little douchebag backstabber, the kind of guy who would testify against you at your impeachment trial.
Yeah, right. Right. Yep.
And then CNN backs him up after he gets fired. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was an austere and,
Yeah, he was like that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so he's surrounded by opponents. He doesn't have, Jefferson is back at Monticello now, so he's retired. And I mean, how long can Jefferson keep waiting for this publishing to go back? And Lewis is not, it's not just that he's struggling to get it done. He's making no effort.
None.
No effort at all.
But I can't imagine how lost those guys were, afterwards. Like, for instance, I was going to bring it up before. When they were coming back, before they hit St. Louis again, they saw their first sign of civilization. It was cows.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, holy cow, this is civilization. I mean, they're out in the middle of nothing. There's no cabins or anything. Right. But, somebody's got some land and there's cows. And that's when Coulter asked permission to bug out.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I can't go back to civilization. Can I boogie?
We go mountain men. A lot of them did. They went and just became mountain men.
Yeah. And he became a credible, historical figure as far as mountain men go.
So that takes us into Jeremiah Johnson.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
So have you ever been tempted to think about, have you ever fantasized about being a mountain man?
Oh, hell yeah. Man, that would be cool as hell.
So what is the gig of a mountain man?
The gig, well, it's trapping.
Right.
Yeah, that's your gig, trapping. You're a fur dude.
Yeah. So you got to get along with the Indians.
Yep.
Do some Grizzly Adams shit.
Yep. You got to be good at trade. You got to be good at establishing rapport. You got to be a linguist.
Did you like Grizzly Adams as a kid?
Oh, yeah, as a kid. I would hate it right now.
Yeah.
But, so corny.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a kid.
I remember it started as a movie.
Right.
I saw it in the theater and I was
it in the theater too.
I was blown.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He had his, of course, he had his bear. What was the name of his bear?
Oh, man. So people are going to crush us if we don't remember that.
Just write it in the comments.
Oh, man. I'm so sorry. I forgot.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. And then he has an Indian buddy.
Yep.
Who would always show up. And but anyway, yeah, so a lot of those guys boogied and became mountain men. Yeah. They kind of went to that next. So they were forever changed.
Right.
They couldn't just go back in and blend with the normal. Man. So that's you've got to relate so much to what these guys went through when they came back.
Yep. Absolutely. 100%. I mean, to have once again, to have that much purpose and drive and that grandiose of a mission.
And brothers.
Yeah. I mean, imagine how tight you were with your teammate on something like that.
Yeah, they said when somebody coughed, they knew who it was.
Right.
They could tell by somebody's footsteps who it was, by somebody's breathing who it was. They know who liked salt, who didn't like salt. They knew everything about each other.
Yep.
And then to come back. So there, I mean, again, the significance of the cow is that it's a cow.
Right.
Cow means home. There's no cows in the Rockies. There's no cows in the Great Plains. That is, farming animals are not going to be out there in the wild. They were seeing elk and all that crazy stuff. The sign of a cow as they're going down the river means civilization, United States, man.
Yeah. So yeah, I bummed out a couple guys right away. I mean, some guys were elated. It's like, yeah, we're home. We're almost there.
Right.
You know, we got another day or two or whatever it is. Because coming back, they were covering some ground.
Yeah.
You know, up to 70 miles a day.
Downhill, bro.
Yep. Downhill, downstream. Let's just let the river do the work. We've worked our asses off enough.
Yeah.
Put up that sail.
Yeah, it was just a harrowing thing, but the lostness, you see it in Clark. So, I mean, there wasn't much, even though he's governor of like the Western Hemisphere now, and he's got his man Lewis.
Right.
He's got his man Clark there. Now, Clark, however, he did well. He got acclimated back, dude.
Yep.
He found a woman.
He was repatriated.
Yeah, he got things balanced. He was, taking care of what are we calling her again? Sacagawea's kids, both of them, raising them, kept his promise. Now, later letters that appeared between the correspondence between him and his brother, kind of showed the slave master side to him, despite his wonderful treatment with York out there. When York came back and saw everybody was rewarded. They got money, they got land, everything. York got nothing. He was returned back to the servitude. Right.
Yep.
So that just shows you kind of it was a backward, they were still in transition. It's like, I remember you can't be too hard on people because anachronistically, you can't just judge everybody based on our values today, and appreciate, as we said earlier, what they did do. When I was in art school, this is just like 1990. So this is just as the desktop revolution is beginning, right? And so when we would take what they had called production class, and production was what it took to get something made for print, whether magazine or book cover or whatever it was. So you had to lay it out on a board. And so if you had a logo on there, that logo had to be inked. You had to draw it and ink it, and then it had to be shot with a photostat camera, and then that had to be pasted down, and then you had to use a typesetting machine to print out columns of text, which they also got glued down on that. And then if you had something that was kind of illustrated, you got to get an airbrush artist to do all that, and then a photo, and then there would be all these layers because the layers would separate which color was used. So you would have to prepare a print project like this took layers of whatever. So that was production. We learned production with the Mylar and the cutting boards and the X-Acto knives and the rapidographs and all this stuff, So I still got all that stuff in my attic, right? And so, but I remember, at the time, the computers were becoming more and more a part of things. And so I had an advertising teacher who taught our production class, and she worked for one of the big Dallas agencies, okay? And she told our class, she said, computers will never take over production. In less than 365 days from that statement, it had completely taken it over. We never took out an X-Acto knife again. It was done. Everything was done. You just send it, just send the file over to the printer and they'll take care of it from there. Well, is she an idiot? No, she's just born at that weird time, before the transition. Really happened. And so that's one of the things I hate, dude, as I said it earlier, about this woke culture and the depreciation of our history, our tradition, our whatever, simply because you just figured out that there's 100 genders.
Right. Yep. I even hate the term woke.
Yeah.
Hate it.
As if it's revelatory.
Right.
As if it's like you're a prophet and God has just divined this great
insight.
I have
been woke.
I am so insightful that I can see that there's more than 100 genders.
Yeah.
Now, of course, they were not woke at this time, but there was still, like you said, Jefferson, there was a lot of people who were not necessarily supportive of what would later come in abolition. They wanted this stuff to end. They wanted slavery to end, but the economy was so based on it. And there was other countries who also engaged in slavery, and those things dissipated in and of themselves. They were able to legislate that stuff out. We went to war about it. Obviously the abolitionists were very revolutionary minded. So, it's like burn the house down and just start the conflagration and we'll settle this thing overnight. But, this was the prologue to that. You know what I mean? This was what was leading up to that. And so like you said, man, it was the first time a woman had voted, and the first time, African American had voted in this country. And it was under the leadership of these two guys. So despite whatever may have happened afterwards with Lewis's, disintegration into the void, and Clark and he later freed York, I think after about like 5 years or something like that. But, still at the time, he didn't beat him at one point.
Right.
He beat him at one, but just because it was just like he said, he's getting uppity, he's getting full of himself or whatever.
Too big for his britches.
But this was the winding down of what would forever change. And it was Jefferson said it would take, what did he say, 150 generations to expand and for civilization to cover this continent that these two guys just traversed. And they did it in like 5.
Right. Yeah.
So, right. Because as soon as they came back, there was like all kinds of expedition parties heading up the Missouri.
Yep. The old Roger Bannister effect.
Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden everybody's going up there and they were asking them questions. Everybody was, drilling them, this mass debriefing from self-appointed explorers. It's like, I wonder if those guys are just Clark and Lewis sitting there thinking, you guys,
bunch of amateurs.
You're not going to make it in a week.
Right. Bunch of rookies.
Or tell them like wrong stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Issue them the maps upside down.
When you get to this one fork in the river, go right. Don't go south.
Right.
Because remember that part where they had a debate over which one they were going to go, and the men predominantly thought they should go right. And Clark and Lewis said, no, we need to go this way. It took a while, like 45 miles or so, for them to realize, we took the right way. But man,
and that was all because of the it wasn't the flow of the water, it was the color of it.
Yeah, the one was like real muddy, and so they figured the one going north that was muddy was continuing the Missouri.
Right.
That was valid. That's a valid argument, bro.
Yep.
Lewis and Clark were like, we're going to be the descending. We will pull rank
right
here.
Yep.
Which was a wise move. But yeah, after all this, I knew what anybody else would know about Lewis and Clark. Nothing.
Right.
Only that I just kind of categorized them with a Daniel Boone, just dudes with furry hats and canoes, So I didn't know the story until, you started to talk to me.
Yep.
About it.
And that book covers it well.
Yeah.
Really well.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other stuff out there. There's books filled with, I have one of them on my shelf where I have the journals.
Yeah.
It's just page after page of the journals and all the drawings and all that stuff, which is really cool. It's a nice book to have. But as far as a reader goes, covering the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to go deeper, I think I was going through some lectures, but I think it's Gary Moulton is his name. He would be considered like the premier dude. He's the one who did the complete multi-volume set just on the journals themselves. So, if you have a lust of being gagged by footnotes and these sorts of things, you will have to do that weighty academic reading to get some more of the details. Because again, you could walk away from this book and not realize, for example, how much Gass wrote.
Right. Yeah.
And how much, what these other guys did. Because you just can't fit it. Like you said, you can't do it in a movie.
Right.
You can't fit it in this book.
And most all the guys had journals. Most all of them. They were all logging stuff down. Their day-to-day activities, stuff like that. So be neat to see it from somebody else's perspective.
Yeah, it really would. But yeah, so you walk away from this going, this is truly American. I don't know any other way. I can't think of other figures in world history that compare maybe outside of the adventure of a Columbus or maybe the Vikings, if you knew more about that.
Yeah, but it's a part of our history that we should all know something about. I host trivia at my local pub. And when I first started doing it, one of my categories was on the core discovery. 15 questions. And I kept them pretty light.
Yeah.
Who bought Louisiana? How much did he pay? When was it? And I even gave him a plus or minus 2 years. When did it start?
Right.
When did they, and from where did they start? That kind of stuff. But I was blown away by how many people didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very little.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
And these are adults.
Well, it's an interesting time period. I mean, this is, because when Lewis was born, I think in 1774.
Yeah, right.
So he was 2 years old when crap was going down and his dad was, musket to musket against the British. Mm-hmm. So when you go jump up ahead to, the time of the Constitution, so he's getting a little older. So he's a young guy.
Yep.
And so this is the outset of the 19th century. So, what is that like? Because I mean, you don't get into a war again with Great Britain until 1812. So, you've got this time period like you would have in any beginning of a century.
Right.
These wars are over. There's an established country. Things are starting to move west. But for Lewis, he grew up in those Virginia mountains, and so he wondered what was above and beyond all of that, what was out there. So there was a sense of hope and vision and all of those things. The American bureaucracy had not, it was still fledgling along. So there was a lot of, individuality and state focus and all of that. But they were states now. They weren't thinking in terms of colonies.
Right.
This was a different mindset. You're now thinking of nation. More so than just this confederacy.
Right.
So, and you can see, obviously, by the time we get to the Civil War, that becomes a dividing point. Is it a war about slavery? Is it a war about
economics?
It's a war about states' rights. The one soldier who said when they finally got down to someone private, and the American troops said, the Union troops said, "Why are you fighting?" And he said, "Because you're down here."
Right.
You know what I mean? To him, he wasn't fighting for slavery. He's further out west in your Tennessee type areas, man. What the hell did they care about what was going on in Washington, D.C.?
You're trespassing.
Yeah, it didn't matter. So here these guys are way the hell out west, talking to Indians who don't even speak English and saying, "There's a great father now. He's in charge."
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's funny, but also they would, because they've been out.
You may as well have told them that there was an interweb.
Yeah, exactly. They've been out there for so long. This is just another footnote that, under the sun, that their faces and hands had gotten dark.
Yep.
Tan. So whenever they would go to an Indian, because they're wearing, leather, they're wearing skins. And so the Indian's like, is this another Indian?
Right.
So they would have to Lewis have to pull up his sleeve and show his bare white skin in order to show, no, I'm a white man. So they went with this one Indians and what's her name told him, he says, "So what do I say to him?"
Right.
And she says, "Tell him like Tanobi or Tanobi, whatever."
Yeah.
And it like means, he thought it would mean like a friendly thing, but it meant stranger.
Oh, right. Yeah. Stranger. Yeah.
Like run from me.
Boogeyman.
Yeah. So, how much were they relying on like sign language?
Yeah, a lot. That and drawing in the earth,
Drawing in the earth. And then the one time where they were doing the translations where.
They were going from English to French to Sioux or something like that.
Yeah, and then to another Indian tribe and then another one. So there's like 6 or 7 layers.
Right.
In order to have one conversation.
Yeah.
Golly.
Tell him this. Tell him this. Tell him this. Tell him this. Yeah.
Tell.
Right. Yeah.
Until the end.
And
At
then,
the end, shut the fuck up.
Right.
Yeah. So that, again, just remarkable. The stomach, the fortitude, I think amazes me. Especially the fact there's that one time where Lewis's entry, he's talking about, I think it might have been when they were going through the Bitter Roots, and he finishes his journal entry saying, twice. He says, patience, patience.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
bro.
If I say that on a Facebook status,
Mm-hmm.
people are going to be like, "You're so deep, bro."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, this is
Mm-hmm.
Lewis,
Yep.
who, when he says patience, patience,
Mm-hmm.
to him, that's what it was. It
Yep.
was because I think because dude, they're obviously walking in freezing snow with moccasins on.
Yeah. Once again, that was life or death. It was him being introspective and saying, if I don't, size up the situation and realize that undue haste makes waste, we are dead. So we've got to be patient.
Yeah, but it's just like that was his pain point.
Yeah.
The time it was taking.
Mm-hmm.
When there was so much other stuff that we would gripe about.
Right.
I've been eating roots that are making me sick for a month.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not what he gripes about.
Right.
Patience.
Right.
Patience.
Yeah.
Holy crap. So it's that thing. It's how little they saw deprivation
Mm-hmm.
and how they were, in other words, they were so focused on the grand nature of the vision that it dwarfed these other things
Mm-hmm.
as details.
Right.
That you can make things that we would consider magnanimous mere shadows
Mm-hmm.
by simply the grandiose size, and to be always every day filled. I'm on a commission. Those two are like the Blues Brothers.
Yep.
We're on a mission from God, bro.
Yep. People ask sometime, hey, if you were to pick a spot in the past, where would you go to be a fly on the wall?
Oh,
Like to travel one day, with the core discovery? One day wouldn't be enough. I'd have to go for, a month while the weather was nice.
I forget who it was that made the point. He said, when after they had gotten back and Lewis had first gone out to the White House to see Jefferson, he was still in office at the time. And so he brings with him all the maps
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. And so Jefferson sees him, though all that he had this hand-drawn map for the first time, and they lay it out in the Oval Office.
Right.
And they're there forever,
Mm-hmm.
all day long, just talking. I think it was Ambrose who remarked, to have heard
Right.
that conversation.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Because how excited Jefferson would have been.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And how matter-of-fact Lewis would have been. Yeah, we got into a little scuffle here. No big deal, we were starving to death, and our toes are freezing off of us. They were black by then, so we were just, taking them off with our knives because we didn't need those little toes anyway.
Yeah, they did have to cut off in some Indian feet.
Yeah, right.
Frozen. Mm-hmm. But the Indians at one point, when they were, what was it? I don't know, was that the Fort Clapstop or one of the other places they were at? The Indians would keep coming over, and they would trade because the one guy was a blacksmith,
Mm-hmm.
and he could keep fixing all their crap.
Right.
So he kept that fort going because they would come over with their guns or their this or that, and he would beat the steel and make it work and fix things for them. And then, of course, they were completely convinced that Lewis was a healer, man.
Right.
And again, I'm astonished at how effective he was with his potions. And that's his mom, bro.
Yeah, man. That was incredible. Yeah. So I gave him, it's always funny as an entry. So I gave him the elixir of this. So I gave him the elixir of that. 4 parts to 1 part water.
Yeah. And then that didn't work. So I added this.
So I added another part.
And then in a day, he was okay.
Yeah.
And back to work. Mm-hmm. And with a good attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. One of my favorite portions in our history. I mean, just unbelievable. And having had the opportunity, or if I ever, when people ask, where would you go in history? That would be it for me right there. That's what I want to see. I want to see some of that.
Dude.
Mind blowing.
Yeah. So again, Mac, because you have highlighted this story for all of us, I think, there's a lot of people who even commented when I posted we were going to be covering this. They noted that it was your mention in the book, and they've started it and been reading it. So, dude, that's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
Let's change subjects.
Q, I'm down.
Let's go to the 20th century.
All right.
And the birth of heavy metal.
Yep.
We got some cool shows coming up here.
Oh yeah.
Soon.
Local shows. Got Testament. They just came out with another album.
And our boy's coming.
Yep.
Dan Camilleri, Mashiach.
Yep. They're playing with Testament.
Yeah. So they're the first band. I think. Forget who else is on the bill. Some pretty good bands, but
yeah, Death Angel.
I don't know. It's Death Angel. No, it's not Death Angel. But anyway, good bands, and so they're the opener, which means we'll probably get very few songs from them.
Right.
So Dan, if you're listening, we want to be backstage because we'll just hang out.
Right.
When the other bands are on, we'll come back out for Testament.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So that's coming, and we've got also Megadeth now that Dave is back in the saddle from the cancer scare.
So they're coming out with another album too.
Yeah.
Yep. So is the Lamb of God, which Megadeth is touring. Now, how does this work? Chris Adler's still drumming for Megadeth, right?
I didn't even think about that.
Right. I'm pretty sure he's still drumming for Megadeth, and Lamb of God's got another drummer. So I'm just wondering how that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's going to be might be an odd dynamic, might be good.
Yeah.
But I heard Checkmate, Lamb of God.
Yeah, it's pretty good, man.
It is LOG.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the way.
What's his name? He's put out his second solo album.
Mark Morton.
Yeah.
Yep. Even some acoustical stuff.
Yeah. Got a bunch of people contributing on it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a lot of good stuff happening. So that show's coming. This is just for our areas. Other places like my girl Lizzie up there, everybody blows through the the Boston, New England area. So they get tons and tons of stuff. But so good things happening for heavy metal. We're gonna do some Q&A, man.
I'm down. Let me put on my spectacles.
Okay, so let's see. What are your thoughts on Judas Priest with Tim Ripper Owens? I could go on and on about this, dude.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go on and on about it. I love the Jugulator album.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite Priest songs is Cathedral Spires. I think it is badass, man. And when I heard Ripper Owens sing Electric Eye live, I'm like, holy crap. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a different singer. He's not freaking Rob Halford, but man, dude's got freaking massive pipes. And but it wasn't Priest to me. It was just another band. Yeah. Because Rob Halford is Priest.
Yeah. So I'm the exact same way. Ripper is so easy to love. He's so easy because standing up there, he is just like us. He literally came from the crowd. Mm-hmm. So he is just as hardcore fan. He would sit here all day long and talk metal with us all day long. And he would play fanboy. And he's a huge fan of Rob Halford.
Right. Yeah.
So he figured what he felt like. Right. You know what I mean? Being in that position where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm filling the shoes of the metal god. So my hat's off to him for his fearless approach to it. But, to get into Ripper, get into the more solo. In fact, he's doing stuff with another guy, Sean Peck, the Three Tremors. They got 3 vocalists.
Damn.
And Ripper's one of them.
Oh, right on.
So it's super, super badass. But yeah, I celebrate Judas Priest. If I was to be critical of those particular albums, I was surprised just how the guitars didn't sound as good as I would have liked. I mean, even on the Demolition album, I love that album. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's heavy as hell. Yep. But the guitars are just, sounded kind of weak. Especially when you compare it to something as old as Screaming for Vengeance or Defenders of the Faith. I don't know whether it was just that it kind of got watered down because it was just coming out of the 90s. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And influenced by those kind of sounds. But dude, Ripper's a power metal vocalist and he's an incredible singer. But Judas Priest is Rob Halford.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. To me. He's the metal god, bro. Yeah. I mean, what do you do with that? So, all right, question number 2. I want to see if Pat could share some insight on how to better prepare for a midnight intruder. You've been asleep for 4 hours. Next thing, your alarm goes off and someone is in your house. I myself wear contacts and take them out every night. This is my biggest concern with shooting at night. Glasses are rough as well since they can fog easily if you have to go outside. Peripheral vision also sucks. Shoes are tricky also. I'd hate to have to try and run around my house in Crocs or flip-flops. No one ever really covers this topic and would like to hear your input.
I cover it all the time in my Sentinel classes, probably even in the Sentinel book.
I think you covered it once maybe in the Metal Excellence podcast.
Yeah, perhaps. But the thing is, you have to have a plan in place. It doesn't have to be the best plan. We don't plan to fail, but we fail to plan. And when you're talking about home invasion, you have to think escalation of force. You can't just go out and assault the objective. Escalation of force also includes being able to discern and discriminate. Can you imagine the feeling? Can you imagine this of having a home invader? You come out guns ablazing, and you realize the person you shot it's mistaken identity. It's a 16-year-old kid who came to your house instead of the neighbors. You left your front door open, and he thought that he was at the right home, right. And instead he went into yours. I had a buddy who's an LEO who heard a bang, home invasion. He comes downstairs with his gun. There's somebody in his kitchen. He hits him with the gun light, and it's his neighbor who's sleepwalking on Ambien.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, the glasses suck, but put them by your nightstand. I mean, because you have to be able to discern and discriminate. When you do go investigate, bring your flashlight with you. It just so happens that your flashlight's attached to your gun. Or mine is.
Right.
But you have to have some kind of plan in place. Don't worry about the shoes. Barefoot's good. You know your house. You know your terrain better than anybody. You don't have to, you don't need to turn on lights or worry about slipping. You know your terrain. So you don't have to put your Crocs on or your shoes. But escalation of force is the biggest one. Now, I mean, there's times when you have to draw a line of delineation where that line you do not cross, especially if you got PC, some precious cargo in your room, like your wife or something like that. Right. You can't just run out because you can exacerbate the situation by creating another liability, that being yourself.
Right.
So you don't want to get thumped in the head. What I mean by locking down real estate is you pick up your phone, dial 911, and announce the intruder. I have a gun. I just called 911. Exit the same way you came in. So it's a plan, but have a plan in place. Better than no plan.
And a dog would help.
Dog would help. Hell yeah. That's the best security system around. It doesn't have to be vicious, just vociferous.
Like Grace.
That's right.
Where's Grace?
Yeah. No, don't call her. She's going to be in your shit.
Okay.
Here she comes now.
Here she comes. Okay. Number 3. Modern metal sounds more heavy and screaming than old school metal. Do you consider 80s metal to be rock?
I think we're talking hair bands, you know?
Yeah, but I can see how somebody might look at, Living After Midnight or something like that as rock.
Right.
Now.
Sure, yeah.
Classic rock.
I mean, that's kind of a hard one to answer. I considered myself a metalhead, even though I was listening to hair bands. I was listening to Rat and Motley Crue and stuff like that. But then I considered them metal.
Yeah, I mean, I think because they're called, right, hair metal, glam metal. Yep. And it's metal because it was a step, it was, we've talked about this before, defining what metal is. And, one thing is it was a step beyond hard rock. Mm-hmm. Because like if you have, for example, the quintessential hard rock band, which we'll talk about here in a minute, AC/DC, or even like a Pat Travers or something like that. It's hard rock, but it's still very blues based and all of that. With glam metal, it gets into you're belaboring your guitar pedals. You're belaboring the amp it's coming through. You're belaboring the guitar. You're equipping it with Floyd Roses.
Yep.
And you're doing, even though it kind of feels more rockish, it's heavier. The sound is heavier. Hence, glam metal. And obviously, then lyrically, it's also going in that direction as well. But when Mac and I say metal, as we live it today, metal is that absence of the blues. So that's why we consider bands like Judas Priest the founders of heavy metal, because it is now purged, much the same as New Wave. Once New Wave came in, punk began to get watered down. Yep. And so you had this contra element called hardcore. So that's where Agnostic Front, DRI, Corrosion of Conformity, even Suicidal Tendencies. This was hardcore.
Put Biohazard into them too.
Put Biohazard, you're right. Yeah. So they, in other words, it was hardcore. They had purged out the fluff of new wave that had infiltrated and distorted punk, and it became hard core. It had a hard core. Metal's the same way. By the time it breaks away from just the Sabbath Zeppelin era and becomes, as we always keep alluding to, dissident aggressor, and then eventually into the new wave of British heavy metal, it's now hardcore. It's heavy metal. There's nothing else. So you think of something that's metal, like a metal steel rod. There's nothing on it. There's no hair hanging on it. It's metal, man. It's purged of everything else. So do I consider 80s metal to be rock? No, I would still consider, Motley Crue to be glam metal.
Yep. Yeah, same here.
So number 4, Mac, when you plan your yearly training schedule around the country, do you pick the locations first and then get students, or do you get requests to come and train, then open it up?
Yeah, the latter. I get requests to come train. I don't pick and choose. Now, I do have the luxury now of picking and choosing. In other words, when somebody asks me to come, I could say, that's 3 time zones, bro. I'm not going there.
Yeah. Who am I, Lewis and Clark?
Yeah, but no, anymore, I'll get an email from a range in a state. But I've learned certain things like, well, let me see pictures of your range, because I've hit sites and the range has been shit. And that's
there's a swing set out there.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. That's a reflection on me.
Right.
That's now my range. It's not the POC.
Right.
They're not going to look at him and say, well, this range sucks. We could only do so much on it. This is Pat Mac's fault, man.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to make sure that, the range is good, that they don't have
So people
stupid
somebody
rules.
like who doesn't understand that say, oh, he thinks he's too good for.
No, I want it to be worthwhile to the people participating, the people paying money.
Right.
So I'm thinking about them.
Right.
Because I want to provide them with a good product, and the chunk of earth is the foundation.
Yeah, so where it all happens.
So it's got to be good. But yeah, so they pick it.
Yeah, so you're at a different level as a firearms instructor, so you do it a little bit differently. But yeah, based on need, let them bring the need out. But and it's changing more for Mac, man. I mean, you might be doing less.
Yep, I am
in the future.
I am doing fewer courses this year. I have chosen to do so.
We're gonna, as I said at the outset, we're gonna get more of Mac's other side for a more comprehensive approach, the Macosophy, more comprehensive approach to life, and not just holsters and sights. Yeah. Okay. Number 5, are you concerned about relying too much upon technology such as phones, Alexa, etc.? What's the best mindset for balancing technology without getting weak and too reliant upon them?
I am an opponent to relying too much on technology. For instance, I have maps in my car. Maps.
What's that?
It's a map. It's a graphic.
I have an app called
It's a graphic
Maps.
representation of a portion of the Earth's surface as seen from above and drawn to scale. Bam! How about that? I pulled that definition right out of my head. Whew, I haven't given that class.
Lewis had one of those.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have maps and a compass in my car. When it comes to cell phone, it's not in my possession, or it's not in my hand when I'm driving. I could wait till I stop. But I am pretty good at not relying too much on any of that stuff. Will I use Google Maps? Yes, I will, because of convenience. But I have a backup plan too. I have a map, and I talk about that stuff a lot. The ability to be able to draw a map. All of us used to do it decades ago. Hey, how do I get from here to there? And you draw a guy a map on a piece of paper. That almost doesn't exist anymore. You say, well, just plug in your GPS, this address.
But you see, just the maps goes. Remember, you used to always be buying that stuff.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What date is yours, man?
Right.
It was like 5 years old. It's like doesn't have that road on here just yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's something we always have to be cognizant of. And one of the things that's powerful about the information age in which we live when we're doing things like podcasts, and I can definitely say this is a part of my motive, and I think it's a part of Mac's as well, and that is to be that voice to ask those questions and ponder things that go contrary to the flow of the status quo and where culture is, because Now we have generations that were specifically raised on it. Now you have kids born after the iPhone.
Right.
And so their concept of patience, their concept of accessibility, their concept of privacy, their concept of whatever is completely different to that of you and I. And so, I mentioned I did this series this week in my group called Hardship. And the point is that because we live in such a world when we're surrounded by these things, and because we're not in, deprivation, then we have to impose self-deprivation. Such as you said before, sometimes I got to go and be a little tired, a little hungry, a little.
Yep, little scared,
Yep. So we have to impose this thing. This is why things like disciplines are helpful for you. It's why it's important for you to train. It's important for you to eat right. It's important for you to get out and do certain things, build certain things, what have you, to make things difficult, to maybe don't take the parking spot right at the door. Maybe you park, further, like Bruce Lee used to do that. Right.
Yeah.
He'd run up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. He would park further away, so he'd have to walk, know. Because like you said, those ounces become pounds and seconds become hours. And so we should, I think, always be cognizant that we have to war against the tendency that we can be sucked in by a technological society and become a weaker people. I think that was even even though I didn't see it, I was told that's what the WALL-E story is about.
Yeah.
Everybody become the what do you call them, the flaccid, lazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Button pushers.
Oh yeah. Yep. WALL-E. Yep. You haven't seen it?
No.
Oh yeah. It's worth it. It's worth the watch.
So I think we do have to intentionally war against weakness. So that means imposing your own hardship because life isn't giving you enough. Number 6, Mac, what was the biggest lesson you learned in the forces that applied in civilian life, but took some time to realize? Maybe something that wasn't obvious.
I should have read these through before I started. Well, one of the things that you could apply to civilian life from the military is never be late or out of uniform. If I'm not early, I'm late. And if I'm late, please come look for me because I'm dead in a ditch somewhere.
Right.
The other thing is, that took some time to realize. Leadership styles, how to mold those and adjust them to the recipient, because a leadership style in the military doesn't exactly apply in the civilian world. So I learned to be more tactful and learn to say things with a little more brevity. I learned what to say, but more importantly, what not to say to certain people at certain times. Bam.
Yeah. Yep, there you go, man. Number 7, what's the most unbadass thing you do or are into? Something that people would think is unbadass.
I got a laundry list of those, man. I do all the unbadass stuff.
Well, give us a laundry list of unbadass stuff.
Well, the other day, I was walking the dogs, and I saw some crepe myrtles. No, not crepe myrtles, wax myrtles. I'm sorry.
And you did a pirouette.
Yeah.
What do they call it?
Pirouette. And then a plie.
He knows those words.
Yep.
I don't know those words.
I saw some wax myrtles, and I heard some pishing. So I started pishing. Like that, pishing. Because I was trying to call in vireos and warblers because they love those plants. Mm-hmm. That's pretty unbadass,
Yeah.
To call in little birds, little teeny Tweety birds. But I've been bird watching forever. Another thing, I draw. That's not super badass, I don't think. I like to cook for my wife. No, I would say that's badass. Yeah. No, I take that one back. Yeah. Screw you people who don't cook for your wife.
Yeah, but see, here's what, if we say we do it, it automatically becomes badass. It automatically
is. Yes. When you see that rose-breasted grosbeak and you identify it and you put it on your bird app because you're so reliant on technology, then that is now badass. Oh, here's one. I have a garden and it's wildflowers. So they're all dead right now. So the other day, I'm snapping off all my wildflowers and I'm crinkling them. So that way I could lay the fresh seeds on top of the earth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, all my wildflower, my black-eyed Susans and my zinnias and all that stuff, because I like my wildflower garden. Yeah, it's pretty unbadass.
I don't know, man. It's gonna be
badass now.
It'll be in the private coaching group.
That's right.
We'll be going deep into some of that stuff. So if you don't want to be unbadass,
wildflower gardens take patience. You could buy a packet of 10,000 seeds, and a portion of those 20% are going to grow. The first year it's going to look like shit. Second year better. This year, oh man, my wildflower garden is going to be smoking bad. Oh.
Did you say portion?
Portion, just a portion.
Is that you
slipped out?
Okay, about to say your Irish is showing, bro.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a hard one to answer because it does come down to what you think.
Yeah, how do you define
badass? So for me, it would be the intellectual pursuits. So that would be theology, philosophy. These sorts of things.
That's badass, bro. Sorry. Tell me you knit doilies or something like that.
I don't do any of that stuff. So it's funny because I'm a very focused person. So like just in prepping for this particular podcast, as mentioned to you, I went from not really knowing much to diving in very, very deep into Lewis and Clark.
Yeah, you geeked out there.
Yeah, so
yeah, you did.
You
impressed the hell out of me.
So that just because like my other half said to me, what did you? I was telling her what I'd done and how I consumed this in the amount of time that I did and all of this sort of stuff. So I had a plan to work it all out. And going through lectures because I wanted some more context about certain things and I wanted to hear from other people. And she said, it's for a podcast episode. I said, well, you get out of it what you put into it, man.
That's right.
But I love the process. I love the getting into the meat of something. And so for me, if anything, I would kind of flip the question back. I would say, explain to me why you don't do all these other things.
Yeah, right.
Explain to me why what's important to you is deadlifts and targets. Mm-hmm. Why the ostensible.
Yeah, that's run of the mill stuff.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So I mean, how hard is it for me to find somebody who lifts weights and has tattoos?
Pretty easy.
And curses and stuff.
Yeah.
Easy. Not very hard. You're an echo, bro. You're not a voice.
Yep.
And so I've always, when I describe this podcast to people, I was talking to actually a marketing person just a couple of days ago. And I was telling her about this podcast. And whenever I describe it, I always say the same thing. I said, now it's called the University of Badassery, which of course everybody smiles when I say that. And I said, but, it's tongue in cheek. Mm-hmm. Because, to call it the University of Badassery is really an arrogant thing to do. You know what I mean? Are you saying then that you're literally the professors of badassery? No, it's just it's tongue in cheek. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because we will talk about stuff, unbadass stuff that we do, so to speak. Mac and I are completely different. The stuff that he does is stuff that you do is really tends to be the more popular stuff because it's something that can be readily seen. There's only so many pictures of my desktop that anybody wants to see. Yep. So the works are different, but the mindset is very similar. And the appreciation of the diversity of life is the same between us. So that's what makes this interesting because there's just so much more color now. There's so many more dimensions to this, and I don't anticipate Joe Blow's other podcasts are necessarily going to go deep on Undaunted Courage. Or maybe the next one we, like I said, talk about sports psychology. Who knows what the hell's going to come out of our mouths?
That's right.
About sports psychology.
You never know.
But that's what I think makes it interesting. So if anything, there was a time, dude, when people would have said metal was unbadass.
I think you wanted to hear about your Hummel collection.
What's a Hummel?
It's a German figurine. It's a lot of like old ladies collect Hummels. They're little German figurines. Yeah.
Oh, where you reach that from?
Dude, watch. So many people out there know what a Hummel is.
Right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my furniture is black. Mm-hmm. I just repainted my walls, so when I'm going to put on the walls of my bedroom are going to be vintage posters.
Oh, cool.
Now they'll be framed and whatnot,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'll put guitars on the wall, but
Nice.
it's going to be, you're going to see a vintage poster of Judas Priest
Nice.
and Maiden and Metallica in my
Unleashed in the
bedroom. Yeah.
East.
So yeah, I tend to be, I'm very typical dude. I think people miss this, because you experience this, I know, because they only see you whether in video or whatever, so they kind of think that you're that
Right.
way, and they don't realize
That I want to learn how to graft fruit trees.
yeah, or they don't realize how funny you are.
Yeah.
I mean, the depth of your humor comes out in your videos, but I mean, they don't realize just how funny you are. They don't realize just how much non-essential topics Mac can talk about and how long he can talk about it.
Like grafting fruit trees.
Like grafting fruit trees. So,
I want some hybrids.
yeah, so I don't have, I'm very dudeish. So people, because they only see the videos, they tend to see it more from the brainy side, I guess. And so they don't realize that I'm not always like I am on my videos.
Yeah.
That as soon as that video goes off, I guarantee you, me and Mac will be the loudest people at the pub.
Hell yeah.
Because you start drinking those crap. I mean, I get loud sometimes. So, and I will cut up nonstop. I will make jokes nonstop when we're not doing something like this. So, but anyway, number 8. What's your favorite AC/DC album and why?
Brian Johnson's first one.
Back in Black.
Back in Black.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, why? Pretty simple. Number one, it was a next level of AC/DC.
Oh my God.
That was next level. That was 81. So the other reason is because I was in high school
Right.
and we were, looking for something new. And everybody, no, not everybody liked AC/DC.
Right.
But when Back in Black came out,
Everybody
everybody
liked
loved
AC/DC.
AC/DC.
Before that, it was Highway to Hell, and people were
Right.
kind of scared of that.
Yeah,
band.
or Big Balls, or
Yeah.
it was some of it was a little corny. It was very partying.
Yeah.
It was very party rock, but man, when Back in Black, plus I love Brian Johnson's voice. Dude can actually sing,
Right.
Like Let Me Put My Love Into You. You listen to that song and listen to him sing. Oh man, that guy could sing. He can't just do, he's not just limited to Back and Black,
Right.
But yeah.
Dude, and how about the line, knocking me out with those American
Right.
guys?
Yeah, right.
He didn't say English, Australian.
American. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the exact same thing that Mac did. It's not easy for a band to go to the next level like that, especially after the loss of
Right.
a front man.
Yeah. And they were popular,
Yeah, so they didn't do, they made their bones after Back in Black. But the other thing I would say about Back in Black is it's as perfect an album as you can make. We've talked about this before, where there are those perfect albums where there's no filler.
Right. That's one of them.
That is one of them, dude.
No doubt.
What song do you not put on that album? What song do you skip?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The whole album is absolutely perfect. Now, the problem is that every album afterwards sounds exactly the same.
Yeah.
That's why I'm critical of Motorhead. People all the time to Motorhead, like
Every song is Ace of Spades.
yeah, every song is just a repeat of Ace
Unless
of
it's
Spades.
Orgasmatron.
Yeah. So, it's one of the, it doesn't mean I don't love those bands or whatever, but, after, what was the album after that?
So after Back in Black?
For Those About to Rock?
Yeah. I think, I think
Is
so.
the one that had Hell's Bells on it?
Yeah, I think so.
Or was Hell's Bells on Back
Hell's
in Black?
Bells
It was on Back in
in
Black.
Black, yeah.
Yeah,
Every good song was on.
Yeah, I think for Those About to Rock.
Yep.
That was kind of like me, just like with Five Finger Death Punch. I liked the first album, kind of this, and then I was done. I was like, okay, whatever, man.
And then Heat Seeker, but it was all, yeah.
Yeah, it just started to sound the same. Yeah. But I would say, when I think of the quintessential hard rock bands, I think of early Van Halen and AC/DC. But Back in Black is as perfect an album as the first two Van Halen albums
Yeah.
are. Like Van Halen 1. Mm-hmm. What song do you skip? What song do you skip
No,
on Van Halen 2?
Right, none of them. No. Mm-mm.
Dude,
Yep.
How good are those bands?
Yeah.
I know, seriously, Mac, how good are they?
They are good to the 10th degree, which kind of leads right into this next one.
When should a band hang it up and retire?
Well, when their give a shitters break, so they're no longer doing it for the fan base, but they're doing it because it's a career. And they say, you know what? We've got to put out another album because, well, we need some money.
Yeah.
And I've heard that, in bands, or when they can no longer, I think there's some bands who have enough material that they could just go live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I like what they could have retired making albums 10 years ago, but still tour every 2 years, as long as they stayed relevant. But when they're no longer, and because I've been to a concert where the band, you could tell that they just didn't give a shit. Their give a shitter was broken. They were doing it for a paycheck. And I think, nope, you got to go.
Yeah. So, how would you judge it? Or would you judge it even from the fan standpoint? Is it, in other words, are the fans asking for more? Because like Priest has been around forever,
right?
But Firepower was like one of the best albums.
It was really good. Yep.
In their catalog. So we want more, right? Even though we know, man, they're old.
Yeah,
they're replacing members.
Yeah.
Because all you got at that point is Rob and
Ian.
What's his Ian on bass, and because I think Glenn's pretty much
I
out.
think he's done. Yeah.
So but we still want them to play because that's the metal god, which is why that goes back to that Ripper issue. The reason why you'll tolerate having Priest around is because of the metal god. If he's singing, it's pretty much Priest. So that's a hard one, actually, kind of to answer. But anyway, question number 10. Are you going to see the new Top Gun? Are you fans of the original?
I'm just going to say no and no.
You were not a fan of the original?
It was all right. I mean, back then when I liked chick flicks, way back when. But yes, I'm sorry. It's a chick flick. Yes, I said it. So is Legends of the Fall. It's a chick flick.
Well, there was a lot.
There was dudes who argue with me.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of dude stuff in it because it's about they're flying the freaking jets, and he does bail on her. Yeah. So it's not like the relationship was restored, man. I mean, chick flick, the end is the relationship gets restored. And this one, he never goes back to her, man. Last time he sees her is at that airport, and he bails on her.
I vaguely remember it.
Really?
Yeah.
The reason why I liked it was it came out in '86. So that plus the Long Beach beach area and how they shot it. Yep. It was just, there was so much happening in Hollywood at the time. So as someone who I was contemplating moving to Hollywood at that time. So, I was like anything that had palm trees and that whole vibe, I dug it. So for that reason, I think it was an important one. But there's a little story about this. We were in most dudes like Top Gun, right? And there was it was a church meeting, and it was all like leadership. It was a special banquet dinner, whatever. And so one of the pastor's wives, who was a good friend of mine, and she's trying to talk about something about teamwork or whatever. So she's trying to make a point. And she goes, well, what you need that other person to be is like that. Okay, what's the thing in that movie that what's the that dumb movie where they're flying the jets and whatever? Somebody says like wingman. We had the wingman, and I mean every dude in that place went boo. Yeah. And I remember looking over at my buddy who was at the other table with his wife. I said, dude, handle your stuff. Right. Handle your stuff, man. Dumb movies. So she wasn't a fan of Top Gun. Number 11. What's one food that most people love that you don't?
Mushrooms. I hate them.
Really?
I don't just unlike them. I hate them.
So even if you cook them,
hate them. Yeah. Yep. I mean, I'm not saying most people like them, but a lot of people do.
So Max, like hallucinogenics aside,
that's different. I'm just saying.
You don't like mushrooms. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, man.
I would say
that's it.
I would say most seafood.
Yeah, you're an oddball.
Yeah, I don't like. I mean, I will eat it, but I don't. I can't tell you any time in my life I've ever sat down and ordered a lobster.
Right.
Never. Because I just say it doesn't taste all that great. Because you got to throw a crap ton of butter on something to give it taste. It's like, dude, then it doesn't work for me.
I have a buddy who says, when it comes to lobster, I don't eat anything with an exoskeleton.
And obviously they're bottom scrapers, right? So they're the pigs of the ocean. Yeah. But all that aside, I mean, and obviously people live after it, so it's not harmful to them. But the other thing about that and like crab is way too much work for so little return, man. Yeah. Just give me the burger, dude. Come on. So, and then the other thing is that, I eat salmon probably 3 times a week. Okay. But that's just for the protein and the oils, the acids and stuff. I mean, the oils. And so I get that. I put my Cajun spice on there and it's good. I mean, it's a pleasant thing to eat, but I don't go to restaurants and order fish because I'm like, I will be hungry in 20 minutes. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's just, Lewis and Clark, I would have been with them. I ain't eating that salmon.
Right. Give me that venison.
Give me that venison.
Go kill that elk over there.
So yeah, I've never been a huge fan of seafood, but you give me a tuna fish sandwich, bro.
Yeah, forget
I
about
will chow that down. I love. Do you have tuna fish?
Oh yeah.
Do you like a classic tuna fish sandwich, man?
Oh yeah, with mayo and onion and celery.
Yeah.
Oh, forget about it, man. Boil an egg, mush that up, put it in there.
Dude, I've always loved tuna fish. Is there any weird things that you liked? Like, for example, as a kid, I could eat sauerkraut out of the jar.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, kids are goofy, man. We don't know what tastes horrible or what's good.
But sauerkraut's kind of a weird.
That's a weird one.
Because it's going to be something sweet. I used to love bread and butter. But of course, I was in the North.
Yep.
So when you talked about bread and butter, we're not talking about Wonder Bread, bro.
Right.
If mom came home from the bakery with
Italian
loaf
of Italian bread,
and it's still smoking,
right?
Yeah, that with butter that's dinner in and of itself.
You're not talking margarine, you're talking butter,
real butter,
not oleo.
And for our final question here, what are your thoughts on goal setting? Daily, weekly, quarterly, yearly, beyond?
I'm not going to say I'm a fan of it or recommend it, but it's something that I do. I like goal setting. I like to see progress in things. I'm a note taker when it comes to daily and weekly stuff. I jot down what I need to do. I like to see my calendar above my desk. I like to look at my annual calendar and know where I'm going within that year. And I think about December, for instance. Right now it's February. I think, what am I going to do? What do I want to have accomplished by December? And I will jot down a few goals. So it's not something that is a hard and fast rule with me, but I think it's a good thing, goal setting. But they have to be realistic. They can't be super ambitious. You could have a long-term ambitious goal, but along with that long-term ambitious goal, you need intermediate short-term goals that can be accomplished. I think that when people set ambitious goals, they're just led to disappointment.
Now, do you have different levels of goals?
No.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sense in which I think you can go a little too far with certain aspects of self-improvement and personal development. When you're spending, a whole freaking seminar on just goals and daily, weekly, quarterly, and all this kind of stuff. Because to me, dude, so much is about seizing opportunities.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And sometimes life throws you something where it's like a new open door. Dude, you were not a part of my 5-year plan.
Right. Exactly.
And so we wouldn't be here if I was sticking to my weekly, quarterly.
That's another thing. I'm big into it. I am an opportunist too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, I mean, if someone asked me, what my future plan, I said, that's it right there. It's 2 words, seizing opportunities. So the way I look at it is I still believe, like what Joseph Campbell talked about, following your bliss, that again, following the center of who you are, your passion, your love, your desires, all the things that you're all about, man, that by just doing that and being good at what you do, you're going to create open doors. You're going to bring people in your life. You're going to bump into people that are going to share something with you, offer something to you, extend a hand to you that's going to open up a whole new, vista that you've never considered before. And if you're so locked in, how do you plan those next 5 years, man? I mean, I'm not even interested in being somewhere 5 years from now.
No.
Do you even think about that?
Nope. I have no idea. I mean, I always say, yeah, I'd love to retire in a couple of years, like retire, like work a lot less, but still there we go. My retirement means work a lot less.
Yeah. Yeah.
I plan on working until I croak.
Yeah.
But I don't I have no idea, because I could be working my ass off on something brand new 5 years from now and be rejuvenated.
Right.
You know, going, man, this is the best thing ever. I'm only making $1 doing this, but I love what I'm doing.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's follow your passion, man. And, I do believe that things will open up. I think goals are a healthy thing to do, because it's always, but I focus more on the short-term stuff, because it gives you constant things to swing for, constant things to pursue. I like what Max said about having his calendar in front of him. It's important that you have some semblance of a structure, because your daily tasks are all about, ultimately getting to those particular points along the way. And so I think, measurable goals are good. It's good to see progress. I mean, I know I can speak for the masculine soul when I say, I don't know. I mean, not many things motivate more than results.
Yeah, right on.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see results, you see weight come off, weight go on, money be made, opportunity. I mean, you see results, man, you get excited. So that's it. That's our Q&A. We got nothing else to say.
Nope. Let's go drink beer.
We're going to go drink beer. Thanks for spending time with us here on the University of Badassery podcast. Be sure to follow at University of Badassery. Mac, where should they follow you?
tmacsinc, tmacsinc. That'll take you to my Facebook, to my Insta shizzle, to my website, just about everything.
You can follow me at Metal Motivator, metalmotivation.com for my website, facebook.com/Metal Motivation. But good things, again, like we said at the outset, coming for those who want to go to another level in terms of getting some impartation from Pat Mack on all sorts of stuff. If you like Sentinel, if you like basic dude stuff, if you want to learn more and go deeper on all of those stuff, instead of just getting a 15-second clip.
Right.
I mean, really go into the kitchen, into the workshop, into the gym, into the backyard, into the woods, into the bathroom with him, where he does the foot flush.
Yep. Foot flush and grooming. Grooming 101.
Then you're going to love that. And I'll contribute as well and help to administrate all of this, but excited about the possibilities here. So like I said at the outset, please stay tuned to our channel. Share the podcast with somebody that you care about, because how could you say you care about them if you haven't shared with them the podcast?
Right. I mean, come on.
Do the math, bruh. Anyway, always a pleasure to be here. Mac, thank you once again for opening up your home, taking the time out.
You know it, bro.
This is the place to be for me in North Carolina, because I have no friends. I'm not a friend in the world, man. This is the only friend I got. It's the only guy who cares. Anyway, man, good to see everybody. Good to see Grace and Gretchen. Thank you, dogs, for keeping it quiet this whole time. But we're real in this podcast. Here she comes. Yep. I called her name. But that's it. So remember, in whatever you do,
don't suck.
Metal up.